We got a whale of a show for you guys today. We're going to be joined in just a few short minutes by the one and only Scott Taylor right after taking home $100,000 at Bowling Green in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Then we'll hear from crew chief of the Superstars, the one and only Mark Savage. Let's do this thing. Listen, I've never had any problem expressing my opinions, but what we're doing here is bigger than that. These are conversations that need to be had in an unfiltered way. Drag racing's all I've ever done. It's all I care to do. I respect the history, I appreciate how far we've come, but I want more for this sport, and I'll fight for it. It's uncut, it's unfiltered. This is the show of shows. The biggest names in drag racing. No holds barred. This is the great American motorsport, drag racing. Prove me wrong. I'll wait. Hey. Illustrated Magazine checking in. It is Wednesday, June 25th, 2025. Hope you're doing well out there. Remember, we've got a goal of 100,000 subscribers on YouTube for 2025. So remember, click like, click subscribe, hit the little bell so you get notified anytime we do an update here on the YouTube channel. And welcome. We got a hell of a show for you guys today. Dare I say it, a barn burner yet again. Scott Taylor, fresh off a huge win, a $100,000 win at Beach Bend Raceway in Bowling Green, Kentucky, at the Speed Promotion and Racing Small Tire Shootout. Much talked about race that people have been looking forward to for months and months and months. And we're going to talk to the winner himself about 2:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Then at 3 p.m. we'll be joined by crew chief of the Alanabi Racing, Alanabi Performance duo of J.R. Gray and the one and only Mike Stavrinos. And hopefully we're going to hear from a longtime friend of ours at Drag Illustrated, the original, the OG Drag Illustrated director of photography, Jason Sharp, aka Bubba Smooth. We've got him reporting live from Doha, Qatar. So hopefully we'll get Jason on the show here in a few minutes. We're having a couple of technical difficulties, but before I get too far along, let me introduce my co-host here on the show, the one and only Mike Carpenter. We're down a man today, where JT is taking care of some family business. He had an unfortunate, one of our dear friends from small town Missouri passed away last week, and JT's a pallbearer today. So anyways, our thoughts are with JT, his family and friends, and the Gunnels family and everybody else that's been affected by this unfortunate passing. So anyways, Mike, what's up, man? You doing well?
Yeah, man, trying to stay cool like the rest of the country, I think.
Dude. It is hella hot here in Fort Worth, Texas. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, man. I mean, we just got over the Surface of the Sun Nationals at Virginia Motorsports Park. Man, it seems like when they go to that facility, we know the trials and tribulations that Tyler Crossnow and the Franklin family go through with the weather there that usually involves precipitation of some kind. Didn't have any of that this weekend, but they had the sun just basically creeping closer to the east coast of the United States, it seemed like, and just making for a really challenging weekend that ended up in some drama as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of drama, it seems like, right now in the NHRA, and I've got that scribbled throughout our notes for today, Mike. Yep. So I think we're gonna beat this horse for sure. There's a lot to cover, a lot to talk about it, but I do think I'm looking to the green room to get a nod from Blake Fontenelle, producer. Okay, I think we may.
It's a ready. Fingers crossed, not a
it's
nod.
It's a fingers crossed. So no nod, but we've got fingers crossed. Let's give it up for a longtime friend of ours here at Drag Illustrated, the OG DI director of photography, Jason Sharp. What's up, buddy?
Hey guys, how are you?
What's up?
We got him. I think you may have one-upped Ty Tutterow. We may be there.
Well, I'm never going to be at Tutterow level at anything in my life. I had to kill the headphones were cutting in and out, so I'm just going old school, talking right to the phone. And I don't want to hear anything about. I don't want to hear anything from y'all about hot. Come over here if you want to see hot.
Hey, I'm pretty sure. I don't know. Heat index. We're probably rivaling you guys right now with the humidity.
You can make up whatever excuse you want. It's indexes. It's a dry heat. It's a cold heat. It's hot right now.
Well, you're wearing a fucking flannel.
Well, I'm in the air condition. Well, I'm in the air condition. I'm not dumb.
I'm like, bro, I know it's hot in Doha. I don't know what you're wearing a flannel for, but real quick, for
It's
those
the
that
look.
don't know, I've known Jason.
It's fashion over form, or what's the word?
Oh,
Yeah, form over function. Yeah, that's the word.
yeah, 100%, especially with Jason Sharp. But Jason, thanks for taking some time. I know it's 10 o'clock over in the Middle East right now.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. We appreciate it. We talked before the show offline, and I felt like it would be remiss. It's obviously wild times in the Middle East. I know it was pretty hairy in Doha, Qatar earlier this week. This isn't a politics show. This isn't a world affairs show, but we would be crazy not to mention that you were seeing missiles flying out the window of your apartment. All good over there now?
Yeah. One thing about Qataris, they take care of their people. You've been here before, Wes. The citizens, the residents, and the guests are always going to be well protected. And a couple things happened, unfortunately, Monday night. But to be straightforward, I never felt like my life was in danger. I was 100% safe the entire time. To be blunt, I'm more worried about what J.R. Gray is going to say when he's holding the trophy at the finish line in the winner's circle than what my health was worth on Monday night.
Well, that's good, man.
Valid concerns, for sure.
Very valid concerns. You never know what JR might say, and I'm kind of glad to see JR back in his winning form, because I was missing. I told him on the show a few weeks ago, I want to hear some of the old JR Gray. I want to hear you run that mouth a little bit, and we're starting to get a little bit that he's got his swagger back.
Yeah, he does. He's comfortable over there now.
Real quick, talking about Doha. JR sent some Wallies over from the Bristol win for me and Shake. And whatever happened, he didn't send him FedEx. He sent him USPS. And everything that's USPS goes to the military base. And it was closed. So I was just like, you can't plan that.
The US.
Can't make that up.
The U.S. and that stands for United States. You got to look at those international shipping options to get it
JR,
over there.
Do better, bro.
Let's before we go too far, man. I feel like we need to do a little background for Jason here and just talk a little bit, not only his involvement with Al-Anabi and AAP and the program that's going on now, but everything that's kind of predated that and his relationship with Drag Illustrated.
Dude, I think that this is one of my favorite stories to tell. And I tell it frequently because I tell people oftentimes that I may not be rich in terms of dollars and cents, but I certainly am when it comes to people. I have been blessed throughout the course of my life to meet people that would make a difference in my life. I could tell a similar story about Mike Carpenter. I could tell one about Blake Fontenelle that's in the green room right now. I could tell one about almost everybody that's a part of the Drag Illustrated family. But one of the first people to join this movement 20 years ago was the guy in the middle of your screen right now, Jason Sharp. He went under an alias back then, Bubba Smooth. And Jason, it's a funny thing. I think Jason shot the first 45 or 50 covers of Drag Illustrated. And what's really interesting is he did that for free. And I'll never forget those days because I remember showing up in Valdosta, Georgia. It was the ADRL Winter Drags. At the time, Jason was the marketing manager / general manager of Speed Tech Innovative Nitrous Solutions out of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, working alongside Shannon Jenkins, Mike Castellana, Brandon Schweitzer, and a host of others, Wayne, all these incredible people. And it's no secret. You can see the pictures on my wall. I'm a big Shannon Jenkins fan. I've been a fan of Shannon Jenkins since I was a fan of drag racing. And I was driving to Valdosta, Georgia, which was about an 18-hour trip from Northeast Missouri for me. I had drove down there and I knew that it was going to be a problem because I'm going down to this event to cover it, right? But I don't have a camera. I have no idea what I'm going to do. All I had was my BlackBerry. So I actually stopped at a Best Buy outside of Atlanta and bought a $700 digital camera and thought, well, I guess I'm going to become a photographer. I need photos for this magazine, so I'm going to learn to shoot pictures. So I buy a $700 Nikon digital camera, roll on down the road. I'm driving down the road in my 96 Chevy Lumina trying to figure out how to work this thing as I'm pulling into the racetrack. And I remember taking like the first 50 frames, let's say, and I'm looking at the screen on my camera and I'm like, these are not magazine photos. Like, this is not going to work. And I look down the wall and I see this old boy in a black Speed Tech Nitrous shirt, some urban gray camo cargo shorts, and a camera that looked like something out of a movie.
Probably the longest
on it-
lens you could
The
find.
lens on it was 2 foot long. And it in the sunshade on the end of the lens was airbrushed. And I look at this deal and I go,
Kevin and Rob Pickett did that.
I looked at it and I go, this guy's clearly serious about photography. So I'm just going to ask him to help. So I walked down and I said, hey, I bought a camera, but I don't know how to use it.
This seems like a common theme.
Yeah.
This is how you roll.
This is how I roll. I walk down the guard wall in Valdosta and I introduce myself to Jason. Hey, Wes Buck, I'm starting this magazine called Drag Illustrated. We're going to change the game, blah, blah, blah. Give him my whole sales pitch. And I told him, I'm trying to shoot photos, but mine suck. Could I just get some photos from you? And he's like, yeah, man, I got you. No problem. So anyways, he shoots photos for us throughout the weekend and we become fast friends. And fast forward 20 years, we've been around the world together. I was actually with you in Doha, Qatar, when you made the decision to stay there. We were sitting next to each other in the grandstands and you looked at me and go, hey man, I think I'm just going to stay. And I'm like, stay where? Like an extra day? You're like, no, I'm going to stay for like good. You know anybody who'd want to buy my car? Because we had drove to the St. Louis airport together. And I ended up buying his car and all the shit he left in Missouri because he was never coming back. Believe it or not, I have a box of your stuff in my attic right now in Fort Worth, Texas.
Yeah,
a bunch of old family photos, a bunch of trinkets, some old jackets that I just couldn't bear getting rid of. I never wanted to let go of them because I figured one of these days Jason is going to call me and want this shit back. But anyways, as I wrote in my notes, Mike, and I'm sure you can see these too, but Jason has been an incredible friend to me. He's the only person I asked to be in my wedding and he turned me down. I remember calling Jason and saying, hey dude, I want you to be in my wedding. I want you to be one of my groomsmen. And you go, Wes, I don't really do weddings. And I'm like, but I want you to be in it. And you're like one of my best friends. And you're like, I'm not really a wedding guy. And I'm like, all right, bro, whatever. So anyways, but over the course of the next, 10 years, you shot an infinite amount of photos for Drag Illustrated. And one of the things that I wanted to touch on is I didn't know really what high level photography was until I met you, Jason. I'd never been around it. I wasn't a picture taken guy. I wasn't like a media type, if you will. And you introduced me and Drag Illustrated, and I think many ways, the sport of drag racing to high level portrait photography. Our sport, you know, the early conversations we had, if you looked at any drag racing magazine that had existed up to that point in the early 2000s, the mid 2000s, you know, tons of great photos of cars, explosions, wheel stands, nitrous purges, but you rarely saw pictures of a human face. And part of our original credo at Drag Illustrated was to put faces to the names and the names on the windows, right? We all know what car they drive, but very few people knew what they looked like. And you and I basically embarked at that point on a cross-country tour of shooting photos of racers all over the country. We've been to LA, we've been to New York, we've been to Houston, we've been to Minnesota, and everywhere in between, shooting pictures of racers. And one of the things that I learned from you is that I wanted everything we do to be an experience, right? Like I knew the photos were going to be good, but
we had that covered.
But I wanted it to be, I'm big on memories. I know how little validation drag racers receive. I mean, if you think about Sean Langdon, you know, go through a whole weekend this past week, win a race, 4 rounds of competition, only to have it yanked away from you. I mean, validation in this sport is few and far between. Drag racing is kind of a sport built on the back of heartbreak. So I felt if Drag Illustrated could do anything, we should be trying to validate the efforts of these men and women and make them feel good about spending their time and their money going drag racing. And so we started on this campaign of putting these insane photo shoots together. I remember in Kennedale in 2007, we were in Kennedale, Texas for an ADRL race, and we did a photo shoot with Frankie the Madman Taylor.
Oh yeah, that was a good one, man.
That was a good one. And it was interesting because we, you know, a lot of times in drag racing, it seems like photos are taken of racers like 3 minutes before they climb in the car, right? Their hair's all a mess. They've got a lanyard on, a wristband, their shirt's covered in shit and sweat stains. And we told Frankie, hey, go through your day, but at the end of the day, we need a couple of hours tonight for this photo shoot. And I remember vividly, there were more fans gathered around the Frankie Taylor pit area for the photo shoot than there were in the grandstands.
Yeah, it was a good time.
spoke to me, man. So I guess that's a long introduction, but I want to give as much credence to what you contributed to Drag Illustrated as humanly possible, man. I appreciate it, and it's awesome that here 20 years later we've got you on the podcast, you know? So thank you.
No problem, man. I appreciate you looking out after me. It's hard to believe it's been 20 years. To touch on Sean Langdon real quick, like you said, everything he had going on Sunday, him and J.R. Todd were, and yourself as well, were a couple of the first half dozen people that reached out to me to make sure everything was all right. And I thought it was really cool of Sean for everything he had going on Sunday and Monday with NHRA to take time out of his day and say, hey, you guys are family. Everything okay? Do I need to be over there? I was like, we're good, man. So that was pretty cool. But to get back to your introduction, it's just like you said, you know, you see for as long as I've been around racing, a car doing a burnout, a car leaving the start line, and a car with the parachutes out. So I was really impressed with your creativity at such a young age to what you wanted to do and your vision with the magazine. I was like, what can we bring to the table that race fans haven't seen? So it always kind of opened up my mind to, you know, like the Danny Rowe photo shoot and the Jim Halsey photo shoot and, you know, things that were outside of the racetrack that were just really good photos. Snake and the Mongoose. You know, one thing about Drag Illustrated is that somehow with such a young, you know, legitimate magazine, but we were so young, we had access. We had access to some big people the first year in. You think about Kenny Bernstein, J.R. Todd, all those guys on the cover. Mike the Hitman Hill, the one we did down in Montgomery in the back of the trailer with all the Hoosier tires.
Yep.
I thought we did some really unique storylines that people, you know, the right people are going to think about that for a long time. And, you know, I'd always done like setting and portrait and lighting photography, but even guys like Randy Anderson with NHRA, you know, he's got a personal studio back in Texas. He taught me a lot about lighting. And Mark Rebellis, he taught me a lot about natural lighting, you know, using what was available. Always shoot from the ground up towards the sky because you got all that background that's free given to you. So it's not like I was some prodigy photographer, but, you know, I was surrounded with some really good guys on the start line that you could pick their brains. Richard Shute and Dave Commel and, you know, just a handful of them. Roger Richards, you know, bless his soul. He just, you know, he tell you where to go and tell you how to do it. So, you know, but I think I actually shot 61 covers.
Wow.
And I'm
yeah,
game
like the first 50. And then we've had a few kind of interspersed since then. I was thinking about that, like Snake and Mongoose and a couple others.
So, yeah, I appreciate the kind words.
It is,
but
crazy,
I mean, that's
man.
what it's, I mean, and I, you know, we can't, we could be here. We could make this a whole series to talk about your career in racing and everything you've done.
Gosh,
but what's crazy? I mean, we're talking about just this window.
Yeah. Not to cut you off, but Tommy Mooney was another one that reached out to me on Monday too. So you know, he's the reason I am here.
Right.
He
That's what I was going to say.
Tommy might not say that, and he might not look at it because I was just a young, dumb punk kid, 21 years old. But he made a huge impression on my life and created a pathway for me that, you know, I'm kind of forever indebted to him.
Well, I don't think most people realize that, you know, your start with those guys in the early, I mean, you were there as a young kid or a teenager at the start of Pro Mod, running around with all these guys, you know,
the Over the Hill gang,
gang. Yep. And Gordy Emil and Tommy and really just a lot of them and involved in that. And then you had a career away from racing, then you come back to racing and are involved in managing multiple major fuel organizations, end up with the Alanabi organization and kind of have stuck there ever since. And then now find yourself sort of leading this charge that has really taken over NHRA Pro Mod this season. In every final round, JR's got multiple wins. Mike Stavrinos has burst on the scene. So what's that like as far as just this like story arc that we've seen over that time outside? I mean, even you know, the Drag Illustrated part of it as far as the photography, but there's so much more beyond that.
It's unbelievable, actually, because I meet a lot of people in Doha, obviously, that are other business people that work for Sheikh Khaled or have businesses with Sheikh Khaled. And I kid I kid Shake Howard all the time. It's like, I got to change my cover story because nobody believes it. You know, working with Kenny Underwood and Brad Jeter and Tommy Mooney and Scotty Cannon, the restaurant business, opening about 240 plus restaurants. Back to racing because Mike Castellana, hey, what are you doing? Can you help me out? I'm starting a nitrous company and we need somebody to help, create some of the inventory and stuff like that. And running into Shake Howard, just luckily picking up the phone at Speed Tech one day and everybody was gone to lunch. And I didn't know who he was, or his English was great, and he's very intelligent. You could tell that right off the bat. And coming over here to Doha, and then working at McAmus's, and being John Force's general manager for 3 years, and dealing with his stuff, and back with Al-Anabi since 2014. So we're going on 11 years, and Shake still has the vision like he did in 2008. It's even more stronger now, the way that he is the expert at putting people in places together that you would never think would be in one little crew area and make it work well. And it's very well oiled, and man, it's impressive to see what we've done this year.
Yeah, I'd say that's like kind of the backbone of what we've seen this year in the NHRA Pro Mod. We talked about that with Ty, and I think who did we have on as well? We had one of the crew chiefs on, or maybe even Todd himself, where we talked about how is it meshing all these people together. Actually, I think it was JR when we had him on last time. We talked about at one point you've got a roots blown combination, you got a screw blown combination, you got multiple crew chiefs, you got Ty Tutterow, Mark Savage, these drivers that have never worked together, and it's all kind of meshed, like we were talking about in the green room before we got on here, where these guys are comfortable now. You're seeing some of their personality come out, their swagger, and I mean they have to be the 1 and 2 odds-on favorites for this championship as we wrapped up the regular season in Virginia and head into, for the first time, a playoff point system for NHRA Pro Mod. So what's that been like as far as you and KH's involvement from afar, and what can we expect to see as we go down the stretch this season and into the off season and for next season as well?
Well, first off, all the vision is Khalid bin Hamid. I have nothing to do with that. He might ask me some ideas every once in a while, but he's the one that orchestrates from the top to the bottom. It's his conception of how things are going to work and who's going to work together and what engine program. And when you put a guy like him and Todd Tutterow together and bring in a hungry crew chief like Mark Savage, who isn't afraid to work and make calls and get aggressive, it's kind of a recipe to only succeed. I'm sure this summer they're going to be testing quite a bit, and that's one thing that I see just based off of social media back and forth is our guys test. After the race in Virginia, we're sending things off and doing things and getting things ready for Indy already, so we can go test before that. And that's what it takes to stay on top, because the more you're ahead, the more they have to come after you. And I'm kind of at a loss for words for what we've accomplished this year. It's just a group of men and women that they want to win this championship this year. Kind of like when I worked at Forces, I had Zippy's World Championship Crew Chief trophy on my desk, and anytime somebody would come in and I would interview them for a job, I was like, well, what's your goals? What do you want to do? And if the answer was anything different than I want to win that trophy right there, it discounted the rest of the conversation with them. And I can guarantee you, everybody that's under our tent this year, they want to win a world championship. And let's not forget about Belushi and Justin Bond and Lasik and Castellani. Those guys are in the run for it too. We can all do big things in these Final Four races.
It's pretty amazing to see. Like, for me, I think it's it's a real credit, like, to the sport of drag racing. I talk about it all the time, that pro modified is the universal language of our sport. Like, it is the only category of professional drag racing that is contested successfully around the world. And I don't think it's any secret that KH and the Al-Anabi racing contingent could race whatever type of car they wanted. If they wanted to go fuel racing, they could go fuel racing. If they wanted to go
100%.
pro stock racing, they could go pro stock racing. But the fact that they choose pro modified it means something to me, and I hope it resonates with the audience, because we've got teams from Brazil, we've got teams from the Dominican Republic, we've got teams from all across North America, Canada, we've got teams based all throughout the Middle East.
And we ran Dimitri in the final. He's Russian, Russian. And a Middle East owned car in the finals. It's, I don't want to say it's far fetched, but you don't see that in Formula One.
No, and I mean, we've had a ton of response and a ton of visitors to our winter series this past season, from Australia, from the Middle East, from a lot of these places, Europe, where it really speaks to the international language of pro mod that we've always called it. And now it's almost the pressure is on for an international expansion of what we're doing, even with the winter series, to kind of bring that same thing to some of these other markets that are hungry for it. So we've seen that and experienced that probably more so in the last 6 months than we ever have, when we've been calling it the international language of drag racing for a decade. So I think that movement is only increasing at this point.
Yeah, 100%.
Do you think we've got our first guest of the day coming up? Jason, you're sitting in as co-host today, so this is going to be fun. We're going to have you for damn near 2 hours. So,
oh my God.
But I do want to touch on one thing just before we dive into this next conversation, and we'll bounce into these old war stories of Drag Illustrated throughout today's show. But I do, just as someone who has seen the sport, or specifically the Pro Modified Eliminator from its infancy to where we're at today. And there's been a lot of ebbs and flows over the years. We saw, Pro Modified was born out of Top Sportsman drag racing. We see the NHRA become the home of Pro Modified and kind of the foundation of this class. And it reach its kind of peak in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, right? Then we see the explosion of the ADRL. After the ADRL comes the PDRA. And now we've got the Midwest Drag Racing Series. We've got the Northeast Outlaw Pro Mod Association with the PDRA in their 12th year going strong. We've got the introduction of the Drag Illustrated Winter Series. Pro Mod is taking over the sport of drag racing. What do you make of everything that we've seen over the course of what's been 40 some years?
That's a really good question to put me on the spot. I think, from my point of view, what I like about the NHRA series is there's a lot of different ways you can be competitive. And you've got a lot of guys that have been doing it since day one, but you also have a lot of the Jordan Lasix, Dwayne Wolf. I asked who Dwayne Wolf was one time. I think I asked Tedero. I'd never heard the name because he was running really good. Maybe it was last year, the year before. He's been running, local stuff forever. I just had never heard of him. So there's a lot of people in that class that can run in the top 5. They can win a race. This Mason Wright kid. Never met him before in my life. But he's obviously got a good program with Justin Elks and his crew at Modern Racing. And it's just, on any given day, anybody can win a race. We've just been really fortunate to have some really good conditions fall on our lap, and we've got 2 of the best tuners out there, and when 2 of the best tuners are working together, you're going to have success. So I think as long as, NHRA doesn't do anything NHRA wise, the class will stay where it's at and keep moving forward. And I think, it seems to me like more people want to watch Pro Mod that know the Pro Mod roots, not the roots blower, but just the roots of the class. It's just really interesting. And, this weekend, Sidney Frigo from Brazil ran really well. I think he won the average ET of the event, Sam Rukov was in the final, and JR Gray ran well. But at any given time, anybody can step up and run good. And, you're getting new crew chiefs, that's what I like. You're getting the Brandon Strouds of the world. It's, that have paid their dues through the series and the ranks over the years. And, they're looking at them as, the key guys in the class right now. So I think as a whole, the whole class is innovative, always pushing the limits, coming up with, a different this and a different that, and testing it and getting it on the car. And, I think it has not run its course yet. I think it's just only going to get better, but it's also going to require for people to, stay competitive and spend the money and stay up with you. You can't get penalized every time you go out and run good. when other people aren't testing or, being innovative and buying parts and stuff like that. It's no different than Top Fuel. You can spend a lot of money real quick in Top Fuel and in Pro Stock. But let's not penalize the people that are, wanting to be successful and give a better show for the fans, because that's why we're all there. Is to, sure, we're competitive, but if nobody shows up at the events, we're gonna fail, in my
Oh,
opinion.
100%.
But it's just it's a growing. It's always going to grow. It's always going to innovate and get quicker. It's weird. If somebody's never done a chart or a formula to look at how much ET a car picks up from 2005 till now. I don't know what we ran in 2005, but it wasn't 560s.
No, it was
So
6.0s. I mean, the record at that point in time would have been like a 6.05 in IHRA Pro Mod.
So how do you get to that level? How do you get to that point? So I think as long as the parity stays pretty close, I think there's always going to be changes and tweaks to the rules to make it close for everybody. Which I get it, I understand. But I think the class is pretty equal right now, just based off of, if you look at the qualifying sheets and average ETs and stuff like that, the data you can look at, it's going to be. I'm excited about class, and you're racing December and January or February. I forget, 32 cars within how many
600
hundredths of a second?
Yeah.
That is to me, that's just, you can't write that story.
We've been blown away by it, and that's a fantastic segue to our first guest. But before we bring on our first guest of the day, and we'll continue this conversation, guys, I do want to take a quick second and remind you that each and every episode of the Wes Buck Show is made possible by way of our friends at Stroud Safety. Stroud Safety is known for their top quality racing safety equipment, from drag chutes and seatbelts to fire suits and blankets, all 100% made in America. Log on to StroudSafety.com today and make sure you tell them we sent you. Jason, Mike, we've got a special guest in the green room, fresh off a huge win. I would say perhaps a career-defining win at the 100,000 to win small tire shootout in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Let's give it up for Scott Taylor.
What's up, guys?
What's up, Scott?
What's up, big
man.
dog?
Oh, man, just getting back to the daily grind. I'm here to write trailers. We're just working on stuff, installing mini splits and selling trailers.
Yeah, those mini splits are going fast this week.
Man, it's so hot. I'm getting so many calls. It's everybody went to the races and was burning up. So now it's time to install air conditioners and everything.
Oh my goodness, man. It's well, what a weekend, dude. I mean, I'm sure you're still on cloud nine. It was a challenging weekend, right? I mean, we've had you had bad weather. It was hot as hell. It was raining on Saturday. But just kind of take us through the weekend. I thought one of the coolest things about this past weekend Speed Promotions event was just the fact that there were so many. There was obviously a slew of big names, yourself, Kai Kelly, Jeff Lutz, Ryan Martin, the list goes on. But there was also a host of relative unknowns and guys that kind of operate at the, on the fringe of our sport, all thrown in, the hat together. So take us through, wading through 64 cars to be the last one standing. I mean, chip draw all the way through. You brought John Doe, your Cutlass, kind of out of the storage facility and brought it back out. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, did you see, as soon as you saw this, let's start with this. As soon as you saw the 100,000 small tire deal, where you're like, oh, we're doing this?
Well, to be honest, I was planning on bringing little Goldie. I was going to swap it over to small tires. I thought it was the caliber of car needed to win this event. John Doe is a very old car, built in 1992 or 3, and it's very heavy. It's a mild steel chassis. It's not a high-end car. It was built as a 6.0 bracket car back in the day, and but little Goldie's been doing so well on big tires. I just decided I didn't want to undo all that to put the small tire setup in it. So I had a bracket motor in John Doe getting ready to run like the 530 class, and I pulled it out real quick and threw a Hemi in there and went and tested, made a few passes, and that's where it all started.
Do you know how hilarious it is to hear you say that that's a mild steel chassis car that you put a Proline Hemi in, just like on a
That's
whim?
what these guys have been doing for a while now. I mean, there's several mild steel cars that have competed over the last handful of years. Bobby Ducati's car up until recently. So that's, I mean, that maybe works in that environment that you guys have to race in and those surfaces that you guys compete on.
Yeah, I think you can get too much race car, for a no
Yeah.
prep, and I think a little bit less bars here and there may be a good thing for some of them. It's a really safe built car. It's all TIG welded, but it is a mild steel car. I would say it was ahead of its time in the 90s. If you look at all the welds and the way they mounted the doors and the front cap, it's really streamlined. It sort of looks up to date the way they build it, but it's definitely an old school car for sure. It is the original car I had, the same chassis. All we've done is put some shocks on it and put a motor in it. That's the same car I started with.
Do you think that that's part of the magic, or that has been, the no prep kind of movement, is that you can get in and you don't have to have, I mean, we were just talking to Jason Sharp out of the Alanabi Performance Camp and talking about how serious things have gotten, right? Indoor slammer racing, the competition levels at an all-time high. You were at all three of the Drag Illustrated Winter Series races. You were right in the heat of battle, but you saw how tough that type of racing has become. And I do believe that there's still a high level of accessibility. It's not impossible. I think aspirational culture is a big part of what we do. And I think people can still aspire to have a pro mod. Like, it's not, that dream hasn't died out. But I do think the fact that you can have a mild steel or an older car that was built for something else and go and be part of this community and do well, that, to me, like, you're guilty by association if you just show up at one of those races. But don't you think that has been a kind of a driving force behind what's gotten us to this point?
I think we need to back up a page in our book, and I think we've turned too many pages, and I think things have got too serious on our end. I like the fact, well, I'll say this. So where we're headed right now on the big tires is a lot like, it's too professional is the way I see it. It's like a fully professional team has to be there to win. You have to have your tuners and your crew guys. And I think that our car count is, showing up. It's showing that because there's not a lot of professional teams that want a no prep race. The guys that are doing it are doing great with it, but the guys that haven't won over the years, they're starting to trickle out. Now the guys that are there, the competition hasn't got any less because all the winners are still there. But the guys that didn't really have a shot, they packed up and left. With a small tire, I think that's why we need to turn a page back. With a small tire, I saw people I haven't seen in years. People that I know are just straight gangsters on 28s, and those guys showed up and showed out. The craziest thing of the whole weekend was round one. I drew Todd Spears. Todd Spears is one of the fastest guys on 28s in the country, but he was my crew guy for race number 1 on NPK.
Wow.
So I drew my own crew guy round 1, and then in the finals, guess what? It was my other crew guy from race number 1 NPK. So the first race and the finals was my 2 crew guys from race number 1 of NPK.
That's insane to me, but that's what I think that was my takeaway from the weekend. Like, seeing these guys that I'd never, what was the guy's name you raced in the final? Jerry Reed?
No. Justin Reed.
Justin Reed. Like, I'm going, I've never seen this car before. I don't know this guy. And here he is lined up against one of the biggest names in door slammer drag racing today. And that was a hell of a drag race.
He's a killer. Like, I've raced him at, Gulfport Dragway, and I've raced him at Leaksville, some of the smaller tracks. And he's an absolute killer. He's good on no prep. I think that these 28-inch tire cars, I think they deserve some spotlight. And I think by us turning a page back and maybe investing a little more in the small tire stuff, I think these guys can come to light. And there's a lot of them. There's not just 5 guys that are killers over there. There's 25 people running 28-inch tires that not a lot of people's heard of, but I'm telling you, top-notch teams.
Is that what
impressed.
I mean, you kind of alluded to it in your previous comment. Is that what we can expect to see more of from Speed Promotions going forward? I mean,
That's what I hope.
Obviously we got to address the elephant in the room, and the announcement that was put out yesterday about what's going on with Epping this weekend and then the Canadian races. Is that what? So tell us what you can as far as what's going on and what we maybe can see as far as that organization moving forward.
To be honest, they have not told us a lot. They've told us it's not ending. We're just making a little change. Canada was technical difficulties. That wasn't us just pulling out. it just didn't make sense for us crossing the border and the things that some new requirements, and it just wasn't.
And
They wasn't
those
making it.
earlier points you were making. I mean,
Yeah.
you're asking some guys that work for a living, you know what I mean, and have other businesses to tow across the fucking country to another land, go through customs. I mean, that's a big ask for a Top Fuel team. That's a big ask for a NASCAR team, right? And it's a really big ask of some good old boys from Mississippi.
That's right. Absolutely. And so that being set aside, you know, I'm not, they haven't told me directly what's happening. All they said is, look, be prepared to race. We're going to race. And in my personal opinion, nothing to do with the show. I'm going to say 28-inch tires is going to be, they're going to be more big money races on 28s. If it's not from Speed Promotions, it'll be from somebody. I'm telling you, it's the 28-inch tire deal has been growing and growing, and I've honestly been pushing for it for about 5 years, trying to make it happen. And several of the guys have. Obviously, Boost has been pushing for it. A lot of the guys on the show pushed back on the 28s. They didn't really want to do it. You know, they had a handle on the big tire stuff, and they were really hesitant to want to race on 28s. But now they've sort of stuck their foot in the water, and it wasn't real bad, and they sort of liked it. Now I think they're ready to race on 28s. So I think it's exciting. I think it's going to bring what we need to get things back popping. The fans were there. The racers were there. Why wouldn't we go that direction is the way I see it.
I mean, the timing's working out pretty well by that regard. You kind of got your proof of what can work here with the small tires. And then you've got, for various reasons, this break that you're going to have. So it kind of seems like we're setting up to maybe regroup and see more of that. And the timing is probably advantageous.
Absolutely.
Sometimes we have to rewind, and it's really hard to do. Like putting the rabbit back in the hat, like it's a challenge, right? Especially, with the way Street Outlaws and No Prep Kings kind of escalated, and it went from back half mild steel cars that were, pretty rough around the edges to world-class stuff, right? Like world-class equipment. And I think that it almost evolved too quickly. And it's hard to get the rabbit back in the hat. But I remember having this conversation with Jason Scruggs when the PDRA was just an idea in his and a handful of other racers' mind. And he asked me, Wes, what would you do? And I said, man, somebody's got to have the balls to stick their finger on the rewind button. Like somebody's got to have the balls to like go, we've got to run this back a little bit, right? We got to run it back a little bit. We've let it outrun what is sustainable long term. We got to take it back a little bit. And I think that that's kind of what we're seeing with the 28-10-5 deal is we've got cars that are on a sketchy ass surface that are overpowered, but it's a hell of a show, and it brings the tuner and the driver back into the conversation where it's not just the guy with the biggest, the deepest pockets.
Well, that's what MPK was. I mean, that's what Street Outlaws was at its core, and that's what MPK was when it first started, but it evolved too far, I guess is what we're saying. So rewinding that a bit to what you're saying, Wes, putting that back into play as far as the tire being the limiting factor, put drivers and crews back in it to where you like the car that you rolled out there, and a lot of those cars that were there this weekend, you don't have to have basically a top of the line pro mod to compete. I think that is we've talked about that a lot, and we're seeing that across the board. I think Little Gangsters, I think there's a lot of stuff that is showing that type of racing has a huge market, and the top level stuff, once you reach there, it's really hard to sustain it. And I think that is exactly what we've seen with, the various streaming options that are out there for NPK or we call it NPK, but Speed Promotions racing at this point, not on TV anymore, all those things that where it became unsustainable without all of those factors in play. So now maybe something like that does make much more sense.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The Speed Promotions, the big tire side of it is, they did the no rules trying to make it, I would say, more desirable, but man, it made it tough. I mean, the no rules cost each team a lot of money to be no rules. It wasn't as simple as just showing up with a car. Then we had to get lighter, and then we had to have more power, and then we had double power adders.
No rules always adds costs. I mean, I've never seen a situation where no rules reduces the cost or makes it more accessible. That's really what happened to ADRL. And we see a lot of people clamoring still for Pro Extreme, no rules, outlaw pro modified. And when we have a quote unquote outlaw pro mod race and it has rules, then we get blasted for that. But I hate to tell you, there's a solid track record of seeing how quickly things go awry when you have truly no rules, and it's just totally unsustainable. I know there's a handful of guys that really stick by that, but there's really no consistent place to race those cars.
It's a race to the bottom. It's a
Yeah.
lot like competing on price, right? Like it's not a smart play. You got to find other ways to win that battle. And I saw this quote the other day, and it says, history doesn't always repeat itself, but it usually rhymes. And I think I love that quote, because, hey man, we've seen this throughout the course of time, that anytime there was a no rules, no holds barred thing, it quickly becomes a race to the bottom. And the only thing that happens is people start to splinter off, right? Because it's unsustainable. It's something that it requires extreme wealth to keep up with, because there's going to be someone come along that can do it, that can test every weekend, that can put a blower belt on it after every run, whatever the case may be.
RVW is another example of that.
I agree.
I mean, that's look at where it is now, and even Donald, I think, would admit that. And you see him kind of pivoting and some of the stuff that he's presenting at this point. So,
and that's another place where the tire was originally.
Yeah,
because I mean, I'm a dude that owned a set of BFG drag radials, right? And those tires were junk. Like, they were better than a street tire, but they were not like great racing tires. And for the longest time, the tire really was the limiting factor. And then Mickey Thompson gets involved, and the next thing you know, they're rolling out the Pro Radial and blah, blah, blah. And every time you turn around, they've got a new version of their tire. And we're at a point now where it's not at all like surprising to see a car run a 3.4 second elapsed time on a radial. I mean, the tire is no longer the limiting factor, and that was the magic of the class. So, how do you go? And that's where I think the 28-10-5, to me, I think it's cool, because when you run the 28 on a prep track with no bars, you can't get after it enough down low to keep the front end on the ground, right? Like, so it really, it's a cool tire in that you can race it on no prep and you can race it on prep. You know, like, it's a very versatile thing. And that's what we see in drag racing today. Like, one of the driving forces, I think, behind Pro Modified and the popularity of that class and the seemingly like gold rush to this class and people building cars is you can race it in a lot of places. You can put radials on it and go do that deal. You can go down to Big Jake's race or whatever and run no time stuff. You can run Midwest. You can run Northeast. You can run PDRA. You can run NHRA. There's so many places to run those cars. And what I think No Prep Kings kind of fell prey to initially was people were building these purpose-built cars for MPK, and that was really the only place you could run them, you know, and be successful. You know what I'm saying? Like, you couldn't take those cars and go to an NHRA race and have a chance, or go to a PDRA race and have a chance. I mean, there were some guys that defied odds, Kai Kelly, etc. But by and large, that's a real uphill battle. So I hope you're right, Scott. I really hope that it is. There's an opportunity for reinvention. I know a lot of people are looking at the Speed Promotions deal, and, you know, there's obviously, admittedly, there's been a lot of issues and problems, right? There's kind of a lack of transparency. People don't seem to know what's going on. There's some brand identity issues, but there is an opportunity in here somewhere.
Absolutely.
And, you know, the opportunity is to reinvent. And I think a reinvention towards small tire racing could be the answer, and bring back some of these guys, the PD Abrams. I saw PD in the chat. Bring back the Bobby Ducatis, some of these guys that have kind of gone on to find other places to race and other things to do. If you go back to a nitty gritty little 8th mile, no prep, and a 28, you're going to see those guys come back, because they can be the difference maker.
Yeah, and that's definitely the route I hope it goes. You know, they're going to finish the championship from what I'm told. So I hope that's the route we go eventually, is the 28s. I definitely hope they, finish the championship. I'm currently leading, so hopefully we can hang on to that. My luck, we're leading. They're like, no, we're moving to 28s, but
100%, man. Well, no, dude, it's been, I'm excited for the win. I hate like some of the things that are going on in your, but I'm glad that we've created a new home for you down in Bradenton, Florida at the Drag Illustrated Winter Series, right?
Absolutely.
We massively enjoyed having you be a part of this, our season this year. You're a star in our sport. You're beloved, and we're really happy to have you be a part of all this stuff.
Well, I appreciate that, and we felt welcome there from you guys and the racers. And it was, the first race we went to, I think everybody was a little standoffish towards us after we raced and got in there, and they saw us grinding just like every other team. Everybody started coming by the pits and talking with us, and before the third race was up, man, we made a lot of new friends, and we talked to a lot of people, and I have a lot of respect for everybody that runs Pro Mod, and y'all's group as well. So we learned a lot. I would contribute our success this season to us running Pro Mod over the winter, really, because we learned so much. Getting a time slip every single pass, we learned a lot, and we wasn't just studying the screen. We was getting data to back up, getting time slips to back up our data, and so this year I think has been because of running Pro Mod.
We hear that a
Well, how
lot.
about that?
I mean, we hear that for our Pro Mod guys going in to run PDRA Midwest. I definitely think that carries over, but I think what you're saying is really cool, and I think it goes both ways. I think as you guys came down there, established yourself, ran well, Kai won a race, it kind of becomes a meeting in the middle. I don't think it was all about one group accepting the other. I think everyone was like, man, we're all in this together, all basically Pro Mod racers at this point down here, and with how tough that competition is, like you said, develop a respect for each other and what it takes to even go out there and qualify for that field.
Absolutely. It's been the only place that I've ever went to that I said, you know what, if I qualify, I'm gonna leave here smiling. And then when we went a few rounds and we was holding our own at that last race until we had a little hiccup with the tune-up. But just to go toe to toe with the best of the best in a field that we've only been to 3 times, man, we were very excited, and I'm looking forward to bringing some heat this winter.
Bro, I think you made a statement, because I was sitting back at World Series of Pro Mod and I said, man, if I have 2 no prep Kings guys win these deals, I am going to be eating crow for the next 30 years. You know what I mean? And it was, and I would have been completely happy with it.
One was good enough.
But it was really impressive, man. I think you got a lot to hold your head up about. I mean, it's tell me real quick before we cut you loose. I know Craig Cook, one of our editors here at Drag Illustrated, did a story with you, and I didn't realize that your new build, the gold 68 Camaro, is it an 8? Yeah, it's
69.
69 Camaro, is a tribute to your father.
Yep. So my dad passed away a little while back, and he always raced, and he had a car called Little Goldie. And that's what I grew up watching, standing on the fence, watching my dad race. And so we did a tribute car to him. Bad Habits Fabrication built it, as a picture of my pops on the dash. So the very first race that I went to, we picked it up from the chassis shop, and I went to Gulfport Dragway down at TJ Pruitt still. And when I was down there, a gentleman gave me a picture of my dad standing in the tower accepting his championship trophy. And so that's what's on the dash of the car, is my dad accepting a championship trophy. And I'm telling you, he's definitely riding with me, because we've been racing. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we've had the car out to 5 races, and we've been in 7 finals. So they had 5 weekends of racing and 7 finals. Sometimes there's a Friday, Saturday race. Is how it got there. But it's Bad Habits knocked it out of the park, and I definitely feel like my pops is riding with me with that one.
Pretty amazing, man. I love that. That's one of the magical things about our sport. And I tell my kids and I tell people about that, like, aren't involved. You will not, like, this is such an incredible community of people. I mean, if you just think about the fan that took the time to bring you that photo, like, not only are the racers incredible people, so are the people in the grandstands and the people piling in the gate. Like, this is a community unlike anything that I've ever been a part of, and I'm grateful for it, man. And I love these generational stories. Like, we've got them. Like, I was talking to Amber Franklin Denton yesterday, a PDRA Pro Nitrous superstar, and she bust into the top 20, our Drag Illustrated pound for pound rankings, and we were talking about it, and she goes, the fact that I'm on that list with my dad, like, my dad's on there too, like, that's
awesome.
Just incredible. I mean, you're not going to see that you're not going to see UFC pound for pound rankings where there's the number 1 guy in the world's son is also in the rankings. Like, you're just not going to see that. You're not going to see that in the NFL or in Major League Baseball. So the fact that that's something that's relatively routinely produced in drag racing, I think is pretty special. I mean, Mike and myself both grew up at the drag strip racing with our dads. Like, we wouldn't be here today talking to you if it wasn't for going racing with our dads.
Yeah, for sure. And, I hope it carries on with my son and my daughter. But my dad was racing back in the 80s and 90s, and he raced for a year or so there in 2000. But to see, people bring me stuff from the 90s, is pretty awesome. People have held on to stuff that long, that just tells me that he was definitely a tough racer back in the 90s if people held on to that stuff.
100%,
No
man.
doubt.
So last thing I want to get out of you is how fast is that freaking Burromax thing that Kai Kelly was riding with the wheelie bar on it? I know you
It
guys
is
are
fast.
no time shown, but that thing looks sketchy.
It is. It's probably a little too fast, but man, it's fun. We got some new units out that go in the 50s, 50 mile an hour, but those go faster.
The regular Burrow Max is sketchy enough, man.
Yeah,
I mean, those things will get it.
So the 1600s were running like 34 miles an hour, and we did like we did on this season, no rules, so we turned it up.
Well, it's clearly turned up. I watched them skating down through there, and I'm going, I don't think that's going to hurt. I mean, it may not hurt as bad as falling off a pro stock motorcycle, but it ain't going to be fun.
We found a limit on them. We got to put a steering stabilizer on the drag bike. So
it's hilarious, man. Well, dude, Scott, thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with us on a Wednesday afternoon. Congratulations on a hell of a weekend, man. And we look forward to seeing you. Keep us posted on where you're headed next, and we'll follow your ass there.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Appreciate everything y'all do for the sport, man. Y'all are killing it. So keep the good work up.
Thank you, brother. We appreciate
that,
it.
man.
We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. All right, Mike. Let's do
Pay
the
some bills
deal
real
one
quick.
more time. We got Jason Sharp, Mark Savage in the green room, but I want to take a quick second and remind you guys that each and every episode of the Wes Buck Show is made possible by Red Line Synthetic Oils, formulated to win, proven by you. We're talking about a brand trusted by the best in the business: Ty Tutterow, Steve Torrance, Callie Mills, Spencer Hyde, Scott Palmer, Tommy Franklin. The list goes on. These aren't just weekend warriors. These are champions, killers, and contenders who rely on Red Line to get it done. Formulated to win, proven by racers like you. Check out the full lineup at redlineoil.com today. Mike,
we're going to need to bring JT in for that Redline Oil script read.
Yeah, I wrote a new one and I like it a lot better. But I'm not quite comfortable with it yet, if you know what I'm saying. All right, guys, the men of the hour, let's say, first time on the show for both of these cats. Let's give it up for Mark Savage and the return here of Jason Sharp. Mark, I was talking about.
We got to get the glasses, man. That must be a speed secret.
So I had to take those out real quick. Got real
Yeah.
Hurry.
Yeah, the black frames must be a speed secret here. You got some?
Trying to make me look a little smarter.
I'm about to be singled out here. Oh, damn. Just take me off the screen.
All right, we in.
Just take me off the screen.
I got to clean these things a little bit because I can't see through them. They're in pretty rough shape. They are Ray-Bans, though. Your boy ain't broke yet. But anyways, Mark, dude, you were in the Drag Illustrated 30 under 30 10 years ago in 2015. And I was talking about this when I was sketching in my notebook, trying to come up with some ideas and conversation for today's show. And I remember first meeting you. You were a protege, if you will, sidekick to my buddy Al Billis. And I remember thinking to myself, that kid's going to do something. I can feel it. And that's one of the things that Mike and I take like really big pride in, is kind of calling our shots with the 30 under 30, the people we put on the cover of the magazine, because Jason will tell you, we put Alexis DeJoria on the cover of Drag Illustrated way before she was driving a Nitro funny car, because we knew that this young lady was going to do something special. And there's been a lot of stories like that. But did you ever think back 10 years ago when you were being recognized as a promising young crew guy, that one of these days you'd be trusted to make the decisions on $500,000 race cars and people like Sheikh Khalid working alongside Todd Tutterow, and the list goes on?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I've always been one of those big proponent that, if you believe you can do it, you can do it, and just put your head down and keep working at it. And that was kind of always my ultimate goal is to be where I'm at today. And it's been, pretty neat meeting people like Jason. We talk about, back 10, 15 years ago, that's the first time I met Jason Sharp, and we in passing throughout times at the racetrack, and now we get to go racing together. So it's been a pretty amazing journey.
I find it to be amazing to have watched from afar. We asked Jason this, kind of put him on the spot a little bit earlier, just about how much things have changed. When I met you were obviously working on cars, but you had aspirations of driving yourself. And I know you've dabbled and you've driven some sand dragster stuff and the hill, a multitude of different hot rods. But has your kind of priorities changed? Have you settled into this role as a crew chief and tuner and kind of found is that filling your cup right now, Mark, or do you still have aspirations of driving?
No, it's definitely filling my cup. I think if the opportunity was there, it's not something I would say no to. But it's not something I'm going to go chasing after. Very content where I'm at right now, and I love the challenge of being outside of the car and making those calls and all those sort of things.
I mean, and you've got your hands full too, right? You've got obviously the NHRA stuff, working with Ed Marks over at the PDRA side, and probably some others that I'm not mentioning. But how is it balancing all that and making sure that everyone's getting the attention they need? You're getting enough testing in. You're kind of, not spreading yourself thin, but as you become sort of a known quantity and a resource that people want to tap into, how do you plan to manage that as you continue to grow?
Obviously, just good people around me. The Ed Marks thing came through the Tutteros. Somebody that Ed wanted to come in PDRA, and obviously Todd and Ty having Kurt there, and that's how that deal came through. But right now, I think Jason said it, that championship trophy. That's number one. That's eye on the prize. That right now is what matters.
Did you guys come in this season feeling like it was going to go the way that it has? Or is this like exceeding your expectations? Because I mean, you guys, I don't want to say you're just stomping everybody, but you've been in every final. Obviously, JR, the streak that he's on, and you've got a handful of guys that are up there competing and offering a threat to you guys. But it's been really, I mean, anytime AAP Alanabi comes in with obviously the resources, the team that you guys have put together, it can be expected to have this success. But has it been surprising? Was it a thought that it was going to take longer for it to gel and for it to get to the level that it is now, or is this what you guys expected?
I really think it's kind of what was expected. Everybody under the awning, we show up to win. We don't go there to hang out with our friends. We don't go there to to get out of town or whatever it is. We're there to qualify number one, and we're there to win. And you put the right group of people together, and that's what you can make happen. And obviously KH has done a great job of that. And it started in Qatar this winter, and obviously Todd and myself have raced each other against each other a lot in the past, and I think there's a lot of mutual respect there. I know I have nothing but respect for the whole Tuttero family, and I think when you have the depth of our roster all pulling in the same direction like we do, I think what's happening is 100% possible.
Just to kind of help Mark with that answer, in my opinion, we were all kind of hanging out in January, making some runs with the car, the 69 that Stavrinos drives. And when we decided to really, everybody got together, next thing I know, I'm getting a phone call or a message from Shake. You and Mustafa figure out how to get the 69 back to the States, because we need to get this thing ready for Gainesville. And usually it's kind of, let's race it as much as we can in Doha, and then a week or two before Gainesville, send everything back. And when, in my opinion, when Shake committed to get that car back a month or 6 weeks ahead of time, I was like, we're going to do something big this year.
How much do you think that it's one of these double-edged swords that exist in drag racing? Because Jason touched on it as we started the show. The teams that are really showing promise right now and going the distance in these really brutal races we've had early in 2025 are the teams that test. How much of a challenge is that, for the class as we continue to grow? Because we just spent the last half hour talking to Scott Taylor, and that is one of the things that I think ultimately hurt No Prep Kings is the professionalism continued to rise, the expectations continued to rise, and there was only certain teams that were really had that level of commitment. Mark, Jason, I'm just curious, like across the two of you, and Mike, feel free to chime in, but how hard is that going to be to balance for Pro Modified, like as we move forward, like as a sport? Because I've had racers call me up and say, hey, man, you got to do something about all this testing. We can't have everybody testing all the time. I don't got time to test. But it's also like, you can't have it both ways, right?
Who do you want to go first?
Mark, you go first.
I gotta go
Jason,
first.
go ahead.
No, I mean, it's one of those things that, how committed are you? Are you out here to win a championship, or are you out here to come to the racetrack and have fun and run your car up and down the racetrack? And that's how I've always seen it. This year especially, it's been brutal out there. It's you go and there's people testing every race, 1 to 2 days before the race. and multiple 5, 6, 7 teams. And, NHRA Pro Mod has started to grow into one of the most competitive classes there is. And I'm not saying that it never wasn't, but I firmly believe that it's getting harder and harder and harder as you get, teams like, ourself, AAP, Alan Obby involved, Scott Tidwell, Sidney Frigo, all these guys, they're buckling down and they're doing what it takes to be competitive.
It goes even to grassroots, not even grassroots, because these bracket guys are running for $250,000 on a weekend. But a kid like Donovan Williams, Troy and G-Dub's nephew and son, he's not making 100 runs a year. He's making 1,500 runs a year. And he's going to 25 events, and 10 of those are paying $50 and $100 and $250,000 to win. So to your point, you have to test. Look at the teams after Virginia, the fuel teams that were making runs on Monday, getting ready for the countdown and stuff. You can't just show up on Thursday night and change oil in the car and service the transmission. That stuff starts on Monday and Tuesday after the event, and it's checking for cracks in the back of the car and looking at the transmission. It's going through the whole car. It's just if you want to be considered a professional class and a professional team, you got to put in the professional time. In my opinion,
it's where Pro Mod is now. I mean, Pro Mod, we talk about, Jason, you've been involved with it since the start, as we all have. It's where it's grown to at this point, 40 years in. This is the expectation at the NHRA Pro Mod level, at PDRA, at Winter Series, Midwest, wherever you want to race it. This is the expectation when you get in a Pro Mod. I think, like we were talking with Scott Taylor earlier, that's still a very young deal, and it quickly grew and sort of got to that point where it got unsustainable. Now they're looking at other options. We talked about RVW. I think at this point, Pro Mod being 4 decades old, just like fuel racing, just like some of these established sportsman divisions like you talked about, Jason, that's the expectation. If you want to compete at the highest level in that class, that going in. I think the old days of showing up and running a Saturday night quick gate and, running the car and hoping to do pretty well, drinking some beers or whatever, that's out the window. That really doesn't exist in any level of Pro Mod anymore. I feel like the bar has been raised and it's just a known quantity when you enter that arena.
There's nobody pulling into an NHRA track. I haven't been to a race since 2017, so I could be out of line here, but in my opinion, there's nobody pulling in the Pro Mod class to a race that's in a fifth wheel trailer.
There's not even a toter stacker over there anymore. It's all semis. That's how it's gotten.
Even our guys, this year we looked at how we're going to run our program, and we ended up buying a little support trailer just for stuff, golf carts and toolboxes and whatever you need, because we didn't want to leave the shop and not have it. Those Chrisman rear ends that we're running in the cars, can't have two. You got to have a spare two, and that's, we have the resources to do that, but that's what kind of puts us towards the front of the class as well. It's more than a professional class. I guarantee you, inventory dollar for inventory dollar, we're no different than, Alexis DeJory or John Force. It takes a lot of effort and resources and parts and inventory and manpower just to get there.
Be there, no doubt. While I've got you guys here, I do think that one of the biggest conversations, and this has kind of extended a couple of weeks now, we've seen like something of a new energy from the NHRA technical department. And I'm just curious.
Mark, this is all you, buddy.
A new energy. I mean, and it's interesting, and I do think it's worth providing a little bit of context because for those that don't know, this past weekend at the NHRA Virginia Nationals, there was a handful of safe runs disqualified. I'll name 2 that I know of specifically. Sean Langdon's appearance in the Top Fuel final round, he was ultimately disqualified. The win was awarded to Justin Ashley. This was a safety violation discovered at the end of the run where a few bolts were left out. I don't know the number. Don't I don't know that it totally matters, but there were a handful of bolts left out of the inspection cover on the bell housing. This is, for those that don't know, clutch adjustments.
Not left out, rattled
Or
loose.
rattled loose. Rattled
from what
loose.
the
I mean, to
statement
the
was.
best of my knowledge, they were tightened, but perhaps not tightened enough. Whatever, it's kind of here nor there. But this is a very common practice to leave those loose. For those of us that grew up racing with clutches, I mean, you didn't put that inspection cover back on until you absolutely had to, right? I mean, you were a pair back or behind the water before you're whipping in there and zipping those things on with an impact.
And you did not over tighten them either. They're just titanium bell housing and the threads and everything. You really wanted to get them snug,
pounds.
but not over tighten them. First time I got caught over tightening those things, I got yelled at. You know, that's the situation there. So I think that contributed to what we ended up seeing. But go ahead.
Well, nonetheless, the run was ultimately disqualified. It took the NHRA a full business day, 24 hours, to make that decision. News broke on Monday that the win had been taken from Sean Langdon and awarded to Ashley. Clay Milliken was also had his qualifying run. I believe it was his second qualifying run, disqualified for a rear wing situation. It was too far back from the center point of the rear axle. Blah blah blah. A couple of weeks prior, at the NHRA Thunder Valley Nationals in Bristol, Tennessee, we had Mike Stavrinos run disqualified because a pin was left in the fire bottle, the handle to activate the fire bottle system, which is unfortunately something that happens relatively routinely, especially way away from the NHRA.
Mark seems like he had a comment on that one.
That was
Well, and
Jordan Lazick.
Yeah, it was Jordan Lazick.
Or Jordan Lazick. That's
Yeah,
what I meant to say. Sorry. Jordan Lazick. And I lump all you guys together. I apologize. There's so many cars
We all
with
look
AAP
alike.
on the door.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, so my point is that there seems to be a newfound energy amongst the NHRA safety and technical department to capture to catch these things. And I'm just curious your guys' opinion on this, because like using the Sean Langdon situation as an example, I feel context matters. And in the context of this situation that we're in with Top Fuel and Funny Car right now, where it's not like we have a line of these guys out the gate trying to beat our door down to come run Fuel Funny Car, I'm as big a proponent of safety as anyone. And I take the safety of our racers extremely serious and the safety of our fans extremely serious. But I do question that decision. And I'm just curious, like, are you guys, Mark, you're there every weekend. Are you sensing, are there new people involved? I'm hearing things like the word on the street is guys trying to make a name for themselves. There's guys trying to, a new standard is trying to be set. Where does this come from? Because a few years ago, obviously COVID, part of that context, there was a massive reduction in the NHRA technical department. They were understaffed. I was talking to NHRA and I was talking to racers about self-policing, a lot of these things that I thought really kind of had my eyebrows raised. So I'm just curious, Mark, I'll go to you. Like, what do you make of this? Are you sensing a new energy?
Yeah, 100%. And it comes down to, their sandbox. Right or wrong, agree or disagree with it, it's NHRA's choice. If it's in the rule book and they decide to enforce it, that's up to them. So it's kind of a hard deal for me to comment on. We've got 30 pounds already this year, so I don't want to go and upset the tech department anymore. We've already felt the wrath of them after Charlotte. So,
Jason, what's your take on it? Because I understand it's such a obviously it's a sensitive subject, and I do think that this is Jim Parks, one of our longtime viewers and a dear friend of the show, is saying the most polarizing subject in the sport right now. Rules are rules. I do agree with that, but I'm just curious, Jason, like, what's your stance on this? I mean, you're a safety proponent. You were a big part of, the general manager at John Force Racing. I remember having conversations with you about padding and funny car roll cages, the canopies, all these different things. It's something that's part of your DNA is racer safety. I'm just curious, like, where do you stand on this? Is there a too far? Is there the punishment doesn't fit the crime? That's certainly how I'm feeling.
Well, I just like to see consistency. If you're going to look at Connie Coletta's car, who's been out there for 50 plus years, let's look at Cameron Ferre's car, who might come out twice a year. Let's be consistent. Safety is paramount. And it's one of the reasons people choose to run NHRA, but let's be consistent and on top of it all the time. Let's not pick and choose, in my opinion. I keep saying my opinion, but I just, you know, Coletta spends a lot of money, and he comes out there with 3 cars, and if they were tight when they left the starting line, the way these things shake and they're violent, and you know, Justin Ashley blew parts all over the racetrack. How can you compare those two? You know, some bolts were in the belly pan, and the injector head on Ashley's car was left at the 1,000-foot mark. So it's like
yeah, that's a good point. I mean, yeah, and I think that I think maybe some of what we're seeing now, and Greg Anderson talked about this last week, is maybe kind of like a light switch. All of a sudden, the enforcement has changed, and what you're seeing is stuff that probably wasn't enforced previously, but at some point they decided that we've got to start enforcing these things, or they had an internal meeting or whatever. Greg Anderson described it as that the racers themselves, and I don't know how deep or far this goes, but he was speaking, at least on his behalf, has pushed for tighter tech and more stringent enforcement of the rules. And so they're kind of getting what they asked for. So I wonder, to me, what we're seeing is okay, but if we all of a sudden see it just completely go away and drop off, then it was a targeted situation. It feels unfair to those that were enforced. If they continue on this path, and this is the new norm, then I think that everyone will adjust accordingly, and it doesn't seem as singled out. But when you're sort of like on that first wave of this new enforcement, it does feel shocking and unfair, but we've seen it 2 weeks in a row now.
And I don't really know if it's new. I mean, you look at JR last year in Bristol.
Oh yeah, the weight,
the
the bypass the scales.
They they go through waves where I feel like they want to prove a point, and like you say, it's NHRA. Safety is paramount, and it's kind of one of those things where you better have everything in line and be on point, and they're showing that. We definitely go up with a different mindset now. It was one of those times where, you roll the lanes, and if this didn't work, just bypass it or whatever. You don't do that anymore, and I think that's kind of what they're going after. And I do believe that it brings the racers to, change the way they think. And like Jason says, consistency is key. If it's consistent throughout the pits, consistent for all the teams, and then it's going to be what it is, right?
Yeah. To me,
I think
the tough
that's
thing
going to be the challenge, though,
Yeah.
right? Because, and this has been an ongoing thing, but I think that's what the wait and see here will be, because what they have done is, in my opinion, they've set a precedent that they're going to have to live up to, and it's not going to be long. This is a breeding ground for phone calls to the NHRA tech department. I know that their bell housing's out of date. This is going to introduce a whole world of that. And I do think the challenge for the NHRA is going to be to live up to this standard that they've set from here on out. I do think that there is a significant differentiation that needs to be identified between like a blatant cheating allegation or a performance advantage and a safety advantage. And I think,
and also a final round, a win, and not even a warning or anything like that. Like, to me, that was the big thing with the Langdon deal, is that's a pretty, like, we thought that Erica's punishment over the wheel thing with the fine and the points was stout. To me, taking away a win, that's about as tough as you can get. And in that situation, for, like you're saying, Wes, something that wasn't a performance advantage, it was possibly an oversight. Yes, a safety violation, but that was yeah. Well, I mean, they
were just loose. They happened. They weren't not put in. They weren't left out in the starting line.
Right.
They were in the belly pan.
And I think that's something that, like, because I feel there's disparity right there, is that, Erica Enders runs these wheels where there was some sort of gray area, obviously some misunderstanding or miscommunication between the Elite Motorsports camp and the NHRA tech team. But nonetheless, she's hit with a point deduction, a $5,000 fine. The very same weekend, Antron Brown has a wing angle issue where his run is disqualified, but there's not a press release. There's not a post on social media. There's not a $5,000 fine. We see this weekend with the Langdon deal and the Lazick deal, similar thing. These runs are thrown out. I mean, that is a pretty titanic, to me, punishment.
Well, a qualifying run getting thrown out is one thing. Final round, a win getting taken away, and more than 24 hours after that win was originally awarded was, quite a deal. And it's, to me, and I don't know who all comprises the tech department. We know some of them, and I know that there's other names that they've been added and that maybe have more power in the situation now. But it's NHRA really putting a lot of responsibility on those people, because now you're talking about taking away wins, points, fines, and it's really become the sole focus of a lot of discussion around NHRA, and that's all on those handful of men and women involved in the tech department. That's putting a lot of eggs in that basket, if that makes sense. Like, that's NHRA like literally saying, like, you guys are amongst, or really determine the direction that this thing is going to go, and we're giving you the power to overturn wins and what have you. So to me, it's a big step by NHRA to really put a lot of power in the tech hands department, or the tech department's hands. I'm sorry.
You can oil a track from 100 foot to the turnoff, and that's a decrease in value for the fans that paid good money to come there, because it's going to take an hour plus to clean it up, and they're going to shoot T-shirts up in the stands, to try to buy the time. But I could get back to it's just consistency. There needs to be the infraction versus the fan value. To your point about safety, I'm all for safety. I've had friends, get hurt bad in cars and killed in cars, but there just needs to be a consistency that's talked about before the event. They don't have any type of driver meeting or anything like other sanctioning bodies might do. And hey, we're concerned about this. Y'all really pay attention to it this weekend. The rule book's a rule book, and you can read it. You can read the rule book 300 different ways. But just a little, maybe a driver or team owner meeting. Maybe they have them. Maybe I don't know about it. But just some, maybe hey guys, we're concerned about making sure your fire pins are out of the car. X, Y, and Z. Give them 4 or 5 points. Because you're gonna miss things. All in all, we're doing good. It's just you get kind of shocked every once in a while when you hear something like Sean getting, chucked out of a race for a couple inspection cover titanium bolts laying in the belly pan. When I used to back Brian Thiel up in the funny car on the start line, I'd find crap out on the racetrack, all Zeus buttons and screws, and where'd that come from,
Oh, it's a treasure trove of shit on the starting line at virtually any drag strip, during events like these. You see all sorts of stuff laying around. I've seen wrenches laying there, jet tools. It happens. Hats, rags. These things happen. And again, I don't ever want to downplay the safety notion of this. And I take that very seriously. But again, I think that, to Jason and Mark's point, I think consistency is going to be pretty important here. And I'm anxious to see what the rest of the year looks like, because this is a pretty severe punishment for what took place. And I question it a lot. And I know that, obviously I don't want to put you guys in a precarious position. Mike and I are free to kind of say whatever the fuck we want. But we hear about it too, though. We hear about it too. But I will say that, like at our events, and I've been putting on races for 20 years off and on, hot and heavy here in the last few years. And what I really feel like this speaks to is kind of a breakdown in communication between the organization and the racers. Like, to your point, drivers meetings, communicating this stuff. I don't even think it was really well communicated after the decision was made. You know what I mean? Like, we waited 24 hours to hear about this, what was ultimately going to happen. And I also feel like the best relationships, I say this a lot, whether it's a marriage, a friendship, the best relationships are between people that are equally yoked, right? And I think I don't know that the NHRA, in my opinion, I see our racers as our partners. We can't do this without them, and they can't do this without us. And I think that is part of like a limiting factor that exists for the NHRA, is until that is corrected, until there is an open line of communication between these groups of people. And you don't always have to agree. You don't have to listen to everything a racer says. You don't got to take everything as the gospel. But I do think you have to have that open communication, and you have to make these men and women feel like partners. To your point earlier, Jason, I look at Coletta Motorsports, a team that's been out here for 5 decades, better than 5 decades, that fields 3 of the most visible, sponsored, professional operations in our team. And I can't imagine, as a promoter or an organizer, I can't imagine doing anything to put a bad taste in those guys' mouth. for something along these lines, right? Because we need more people coming into this sport. I don't know that we've had but a couple of races this year where we've had full fields of Top Fuel and Funny Car teams. And now I'm thinking about the journeyman team that's going, well, shit, I don't want to go all the way over there and be thrown out because we don't, you know what I mean? Like these things, I think the context of this situation matters. And the NHRA is at a point right now where they need to foster participation. You've got the NHRA putting on Top Fuel and Funny Car races. Who knows what's going to happen with that? But I think some of those guys that we've seen come in and fill the field, their heads on a swivel now, right? They're going, you know what? We maybe have some better options. So I don't know. It's a very interesting conversation, but
And maybe I should back up. Maybe that wasn't the first time it happened with this particular Top Fuel car.
Perhaps.
Maybe something happened in the past. So I don't want to be unfair to the tech department. But, you know, Connie's got enough money in the bank. He don't need any headaches. He's doing this because he loves to do it. And when you make things miserable, or not miserable, but uncomfortable for people that do it for a hobby and he probably gives 60 or 70 people jobs, you know. That's to me. I don't know. Maybe I'm not looking at it right, but let's keep them happy. We need those
I think
people.
that's the way to look at it. I really, really do. Mark, you've worked for a slew of different people in this sport, seem to have found your home, and with AAP, but at the same time, getting a good gig in drag racing is not exactly easy. Right? Not only do you have to earn it and keep that position, but there's just not that many of them. I mean, for all that can be said about how many cars are coming into the sport, I mean, it does seem like a lot of them are operated out of the same camps with a, kind of a group tuning effort. I mean, I want to see more people come into the sport. I want to see people looking at this as an opportunity. It just seems like running off one of our sport's well-to-do stakeholders is a mistake. Did he freeze?
No, I just this is one of those things that just like talking politics. It's I don't really know if there's a win-win in it. There's obviously there's two sides to it. We can go, hey, I see this side and I see that side, and it's just one of those things where I don't really know if it's something that we're gonna, or at least I'm gonna win at talking about.
Yeah, it's a really, really, really tough one. Because again, I mean, it's like. I can see, because I could make a pretty solid case the other way, right? Like I think an argument can be made for safety's paramount. These things have to be done by the letter of the law. And if they're not, you're out. So I certainly understand both sides of it. Maybe it's the delivery. Like rarely is it the news. It's how the news is delivered,
yeah, exactly.
So perhaps it's just the way these things have been communicated to the teams and to the masses. I'm not sure, man. But Mark, I just want to tell you congratulations in having two of your drivers, number 1 and 2 in the new Drag Illustrated pound for pound rankings. I took a little bit of a beating. I saw on social media the other day, somebody was giving me a hard time about JR Gray being number 1, but I'm looking at this right now. And I mean, this is a guy who's been racing for a hot minute. He's got a couple of wins under his belt, 3 wins under his belt, 6 low ETs, and 0.40 average reaction time. Absolutely dominant. I mean, what do you make of your drivers right now? Would you argue you've got 2 of the best in the business?
Yeah, no, definitely. Our whole group is the best in the business. Jason and I have talked about this numerous times. We have not lost a round due to, crew error or any sort of error. The cars have gone up and down the racetrack. We haven't towed up there. There hasn't been an oil leak. There hasn't been a fuel leak. That's huge. And I think that's something that people just don't talk about. They naturally see the success and they automatically say, well, it's the power adder, or it's this, or it's that. It's people. It's 100% people. And we do have the best people in the business, and I think, that's just how it is. And I don't think that gets talked about enough. Between drivers, crew members, everybody's just doing a very, very good job. And that's why we are where we are right now.
It's no wonder the car that's getting the Lexan put in it Thursday before the race doesn't qualify, right? I mean, it feels like these events more often than not are won in the shop, right? Before you've even arrived at the track, checking rod ends, checking things, going over the car. I mean, obviously what happens at the racetrack is super important, but showing up prepared to win, I would argue, is every bit as important.
Oh, 100%. And we've struggled too. I mean, before Virginia, we went testing and neither car made it past the 8th mile, and you learn what not to do in those situations. And it's not like we've just come in and had this, unsurmounted success. There's been struggles that people haven't seen. We've had to hood back to Mike to get wrapped because we knocked the blower off of it. We've put pistons in it, racks in it, heads on it. It's, people see the success. They don't see the failure that's led to the success. And we've had some of that, and everybody, our whole groups just kept their head down and kept pushing,
Yeah. It's interesting to see, like you talked about rewrapping the nose. You think, like, you just look at the schedule. Oh, okay, they've got 3 weeks between races, so you got plenty of time. The way you guys operate with your testing schedule and all the other things you've got going on, it's like, boom, that thing's got to be fixed like now, because what looks like a 3 or 4 week break on the schedule is more like a couple of days for everything else that you guys have going on, to just maintenance and service everything, go testing, to come back, service it again, get ready, travel. Like, I think a lot of people, unless you're really, in tune or on the crew of one of these cars, especially in Pro Mod, it gets taken for granted that you just go park the thing between events, or you've got all this time off now for the summer until the next event. What is it? Almost 2 months before the next race. But you guys are going to be working nonstop during that 2 months
our cars
testing.
are in pieces right now.
Yeah.
Both our cars came back to the shop. They're torn apart. Cranks are out getting magged. They're getting worked on, and they're getting put back together to go and be ready to test again. There's no stopping in this sport, class, whatever it is. Everybody's going to be chasing us. So if we sit stagnant, they're going to catch us. So we got to push just as hard as they are, or else we're going to lose that edge.
I'll say something about Mark, spending time with him in Doha this winter. I wear a couple different hats in Doha. Come 10 o'clock at night, I'm kind of ready to go to bed. And Mark will tell you, how do you turn a generator off? I'll see you in the morning. He'll work. His work ethic is over the top, because he wants it, not only for himself, he wants it done right, but it's for, Sheikh Khalid and the people that he's representing, he wants it done right. And I'm like, and that's, sure, I'm 8,500 miles away, but I can see that through our whole team this year. I don't hear anybody complaining about hours. What do we need to do to get there? It's that team atmosphere that you get lucky every once in a while and put a group of people together that have the same goal in mind. And the word or the phrase good enough does not come out of their mouth. That's not good enough. We're going to do it the right way. And when you do it the right way, and it might take you 3 or 4 more hours, but you put that wind light on. I was just thinking when y'all were talking now, if you went to the final of every race, you're going to make 80 runs in the NHRA Pro Mod Series. I would bet where we're at right now, and Mark could probably tell you better than me, we're probably close to 50 runs testing on top of the runs we've made at the races.
On each car.
All of with each car, yes.
Yeah.
And it's that, when you get twice as much data and 2 tuners that can work together with no ego, and then you got a guy like Sheikh over here in Doha bouncing ideas off of you, you're gonna succeed.
Yeah, there's no doubt, man. I mean, and I've had this conversation with so many racers that you can't outrun those laps. If you're going and running the wheels off this thing, and I think it's important for these drivers as well. You guys were both around during the Real Pro Mod Association days in the NHRA when it was kind of ran by Danny Rowe, Steve Matusik, Harry Ruska. I think one of the issues that a lot of those guys were having is that they were seeing the tree 8 times a year, right? Like, they were in that position 8 weekends a year, and the rest of the time they're traveling, running their businesses, and there's no shame in that. But it was this like double-edged sword as this thing gets more and more professional and the competition level continues to increase. You're not going to be able to fly in on Thursday night, go for dinner, and show up at the track Friday and expect to be competitive.
Not at all. It's evolved, further and further into professional. I'm not going to say professional class in quotation marks, but being treated as a professional class, and you better treat it as a professional class or you will get left behind.
There's no doubt.
100%.
And our group, I'm going to say, as much talent and skill and everything, Jason kind of touched on it, no egos, and we're having fun. And I think everybody in this room has done this long enough to know that if you have a good group of guys and you're having fun and you're having a good time doing it, I don't care what anybody says, those race cars can tell. If you're there, you're miserable, and your guys don't want to be there, you're not going to do well. You know, we hurt Mike's car Q4 in Virginia, came back, it was 103 or whatever it was. There was no comments, there was no whatever. It was up in the projects, you know, rack out, heads on it. Everybody's out there working on it. We're all joking, we're all cutting up, you know, sweating, but having a good time with each other. And I really think that just boils down to the people that we have. You know, it's been amazing for the first year how the team has gelled the way it has.
It's impressive, man. Even watching from afar, like Jason's saying, you can sense that. And I oftentimes point to that. I mean, I can't count how many times I've been at a race and seen a driver or a crew guy, you know, going trailer to trailer, taking a little bit of, you know, asking this guy a question, then going 2 trailers down and asking the same question as somebody else and waiting till they kind of get the answer they want. They come back to their pit and there's some dysfunction there. There's disagreements. And to your point, Mark, you can always tell, like, there is, it goes beyond parts and pieces. There's a harmony that has to be created amongst that whole operation in order to be successful, in my opinion.
And I tell you, a guy like Ty Tutterow, if you're around him 2 minutes, you're gonna laugh.
Correct. Yeah, you
Especially
can't
when
not
you
be
got-
happy around Ty. And if you're not laughing, his laugh will make you laugh.
And especially when you got J.R. Gray giving Ty Tutterow plenty of ammunition to make you laugh about.
Oh, there's no doubt. JR is good for some reasons to say something. There is no doubt about it. Mark, I appreciate your time, dude. Thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you. I guess, are you in the shop and testing until Indy, or do you have some other outings? Are you headed to PDRA, or what's the next couple of months look like for you?
Mark's testing in a couple weeks.
Yeah, no, we're getting everything ready, and like I said, just rolling. You know, getting parts and pieces together, sent out, checked, back together, and we're foot on the gas. There's I don't think there's anything under, you know, anyone under our tent that doesn't want it as much as the next one. So we're full bore ahead.
Full bore. I
Stay
like
on
it,
it.
man.
You stay on it, Derek. You stay on it.
Yeah, you
That's
stay
right.
on it, big dog, and we'll talk to you soon. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Savage. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you, buddy. Hey, guys, I want to take a quick second and remind you that each and every episode of the Wes Buck Show is made possible by way of our friends at Applied Race Technology. ART, based out of Florida, Clearwater, Florida, has spent more than 2 decades earning a reputation as one of drag racing's top names for quality parts and award-winning service. These guys live and breathe the sport of drag racing, whether it's Pro Mod, Pro Stock, or the all-important grassroots sportsman categories. Plus, ART is also committed to giving back. They've sponsored some of the biggest races in the country, worked with world championship racers. So if you're on the hunt for top-tier components and expert guidance for your race program, you've got to check out the guys at Applied Race Technology. Show them some love for supporting drag racing and, of course, the Wes Buck Show. Guys, we're down to the closing minutes here. We got 15, 20 minutes left. It feels like it would be crazy to have the one and only Bubba Smooth on here and not to dive back into some of our war stories. What was your – I want to tell the story of the first ever Drag Illustrated cover shoot and the disaster that ultimately led to. Jason, you were still working at Speed Tech. I told you I wanted to put Shannon Jenkins on the cover of the magazine. You said, "Oh, I got this," all day long. And you roll the car out front of the shop. You do these killer photos. Shannon's in a white T-shirt and blue jeans with his fire jacket. It's classic Shannon. The only thing it was missing was a Marlboro light. But we get these incredible photos, and I remember that you sent them to us on a zip disk thingy, and my partner at the time couldn't figure out how to get the files opened. And when we did get them opened, he couldn't get them. They were like low res for him. So he opted to use this action photo on the cover of the magazine. And like still to this day, 20 years later, it's probably the only regret that I have in all of this is that the cover of the magazine didn't have that photo on it. We were able to use them in the body of the magazine, but we didn't get them on the cover. I've since used them on various T-shirts and merchandise and memorabilia. But I mean,
later we got another shot. Jason did another shoot for us later on where he's got his hand on the carburetor. You know, a real nice deal we cut out and did on a white background. So we got it done eventually. It took
a while, man.
That's probably. I think after that you were like, I got to find somebody that knows how to work these files and to make this stuff happen, because to have all that, go through all that, and then, you know, fight those technology struggles back in the day, we don't have that much anymore.
Oh, thank God. Do you have a favorite cover you shot, Jason?
You know, I enjoyed from a photographer standpoint, I thought Danny Rose at his house in Laguna Seca was pretty cool. You know, him in a business jacket.
Yeah.
Just, it was a real well lit shot, and everything was in focus, and it was real sharp and clear. That Jim Halsey sitting on Fulton's toolbox in front of the 68 it was fun.
That was a good one.
I can't, leave out my buddy Jason Line and Greg Anderson, Uncle Les over there in the corner, making sure we were hydrated for the photo shoot. The one me and Mike did with the, oh God, what was his name?
Gilbert the
Jacobs.
Rock Jacobs.
Yeah, the Rock. That was and Mr. Four was there all weekend that day with
Yeah, John Ford was there. That was an interesting weekend for sure.
Those guys made sure we had whatever we needed that weekend. They took care of us. The Lexus one, was pretty unique. The one with John out at his shop in Anaheim, near Berlinda, because we got to have lunch. We got to have lunch with Tom the Mongoose McEwen, and he made. You remember what he told us, Wes, about don't talk trash about the sport. So like I said earlier, access was, we were just kind of through our fledgling stages, and man, people opened the doors for us because they wanted to be on the cover of Drag Illustrated.
It's kind of crazy.
That's always been a thing that we talk about, like looking back on it now, the things that were written in the magazine, some of the hard takes that were put in there, and some of the opinions, not to mention the, creative photography on the cover and throughout, but then to cut out the image of the person and lay that over top of the Drag Illustrated logo to where, it was heavily obscured. And this is a magazine that's only been out for a year or two, to like take all those steps that basically a much more mature magazine or an established presence would take, and to take it at that time, I feel like was very ballsy. And if you look back at it now and some of the stances and some of the stuff that was written, I feel like that really contributed to that early success, taking those risks that were just unheard of at the time, and really sort of changed the game in the print drag racing space.
And let's not forget, we made it on some big companies' radars too, because Wes called me one day in a panic. Man, I just got this letter from an attorney, and man, I don't know what to do. I don't know if it's serious or what are you talking about? What are you going on about? Sports Illustrated's attorney sent me a letter and said that our logo looks too much like theirs and ceased and desist, or they're going to sue us. I was like, well, you better figure out how to find another logo that looks
Mike,
good.
we got to redesign the logo.
For us to kind of get on their radar, to like somebody noticed that, wow, this magazine's got some good content and some good pictures and coverage and stories. And
it was funny when that happened. I called my lawyer and I said, hey man, what do you think we should do about this? And he said, well, Wes, the first thing I would do is I would walk around the rest of the day with my chest puffed out, because there's some asshole lawyers in New York City that are talking about Wes Buck and Drag Illustrated. And I said, okay. And he goes, and then the second thing I do is change my fucking logo. And I said, fair enough, boss. So we changed our logo. But I think about like this shot of this photo shoot we did with Larry Dixon and Tony Schumacher at the height of the Al-Anabi versus U.S. Army battle. That one I thought was like
here, so you can get his reaction. Cover me up.
Yeah, no. Do you remember this moment, Jason? This was a bitter cold evening in Indiana. We did a photo shoot with the one and only Brad Personette that's still in our circle, if you will. We went to an expo. We went to Drag Expo in Schaumburg, Illinois, spent all day at the trade show, and then drove through the snow over to Brad's house and shot Brad Personette for the cover of the magazine. Yeah, he had the big stuff on the car, and I actually got some pretty good shots that weekend, some well-lit shots. But what was the name of that breakfast place with the pancakes that just kicked ass? I was talking to Brad's dad about this literally the other day, and I can't think of the name of it. And Mike will tell me. I can't think of the name. I follow him on Instagram because it was that good. This is another one of my favorite ones, and this was actually one of our big weekends with Sheikh Khaled. If you remember, we had we had the whole top floor of what's that hotel in Topeka, Kansas? The one everybody stays at.
I don't
The Capitol
remember.
Plaza, Capitol Plaza or something. We did a photo shoot with the Titan Gang. And this was actually,
Yep.
Mike will remember this well. This is one of my favorite photo shoots we did. I always seem to like these group photos. But this, Nero had his phone in his hand, Bottle had his camera around, Eric Lazinski on there with the temp gun, Gary White all decked out, his son Brett there. Killer moment in Topeka, Kansas during the ADRL race. Jason, Mike, I think you guys were there racing Pro Nitrous with your dad's car that year.
Yeah, we were. I remember that going on. The first cover I ever designed was Justin Humphreys. Do you remember that?
Sure.
Here we
Had
go.
his hat
Jason,
turned
you got
around
that one?
backwards. Had
Yep,
his
yeah,
hat
so
turned
that
around
one-
backwards.
Same weekend, Jason's
his-
entire watch box was stolen out of the airport in Las Vegas, if you remember that. I
Yeah,
loved
of
this
course.
photo. We actually shot this in Jason's trailer. We had camera, we had lights and all the stuff, but it was probably
Yeah.
one of the lower production value cover shoots we ever did.
Yeah, I think there was something like maybe the CFE logo or something was going right there in that white open spot. But Wes was big on the white covers. He wanted to cut everybody out and do the white covers. And this was before AI and background removal and everything. So I was having to do all that manually,
Another
which was
fun,
the way it was at the time. But yeah, I was doing like the actual layouts well before that, but that was the first actual cover that they turned over and let me do.
Another fun one was in Jackson, South Carolina. It was 30 or 40 degrees outside. It was with the Axeman and what was the guy's name he was partnered
Jack
with on
Bar-
the. Yeah,
Um,
that was a pretty classic shoot. We had
Hey,
back to like your Frankie Taylor store. We probably had 50 or 100 people standing around at 2 a.m. when it was super cold.
Speaking of Frankie Taylor, how about how we ended up putting Frankie's back on the cover one time?
December of 2006, Marcus, the Axeman, Bert, and the Outlaw himself, Jack Barfield.
Yep.
Those were the days, man. Isn't that crazy to even think about?
Pull up the Frankie Taylor back shot. I remember we had
Here was a
multiple
classic. We
shots.
drove over to Galesburg, Illinois, and did a
that was
photo
a good-
shoot with a young Ricky Jones. Look at Ricky Jones Jr. there.
Yeah, I got some really good photos that night, for sure.
It was one of my all-time. I still think that's one of the best looking covers we ever did. I wonder if you remember this one. I'm getting the one you were talking about. Mike queued up here. Oops, I added Mark Savage back. Here, check this one out. You'll get a kick out of this. This was a late night in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Oh, wow.
Raymond Camiso.
Yeah,
we
had
had
a crowd.
Raymond and Tony Pontieri for the cover that night.
Yeah, had a crowd of people around that night too. That was a fun one, actually.
That was actually a really fun one.
Because when you're around Raymond's pit, you're gonna eat good.
You're going to eat really good, man.
And those were
here's
back in the newsprint days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this was when we were full newsprint.
Yep.
You know,
Didn't this picture here with Halsey? Didn't we ended up staying like in a sketchy motel that night where we had to look out
Yes.
the window every 10 minutes?
it was a very, very sketchy situation. I don't know how we ended up at that deal, but I was broke as shit, so it was probably all I could afford. So yeah, that was a especially rough weekend. But the Eric Davis, Kathy, and Jim, they all took us out for seafood. I didn't eat anything, but I think I ate a steak, and everybody else ate fresh lobster or something.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Crabs, man, crabs. That's what Maryland
Yeah.
does.
Not doing it, man. I got a couple other old blasts from the past I want to share with you guys here.
What was the last cover you did, Jason? The most recent one?
Man, I really can't remember.
Is it
I'd have to-
Mongoose?
probably
Snake and
Mongoose?
It probably, you're probably right because I was unemployed at the time, and that's
look
when
at-
Robert Hite called me and asked me to come to work for him.
Look at Jason. He kind of looks like Blake.
He
Looks
does
like a
kind of
young,
look like
like
Blake.
a Blake Fontnell.
What about Matt Hagan?
Oh yeah.
This was
He's
Matt
about-
Hagan's IHRA Pro Mod days. It's crazy to see like the
That was at
career
Gainesville.
trajectory he's had. That was at Gainesville.
Yeah, he's about 50 pounds bigger than that now. He's huge.
Big boy, that's for damn sure. This is a classic. We shot this in
Yeah,
Brainerd,
yeah.
Minnesota. This is another Mike Carpenter. I do. No, you didn't.
I didn't do
this
that cover. No, I did the
font.
layout. That was the
But you
first
did-
layout I ever did inside the magazine.
Yeah, the
was
first
Bruno.
ever layout you did. That's
What
pretty
about
crazy.
Whoever, you sure you didn't do that cover? Because I remember
No.
you getting in my ass about. I had the ISO on the camera pumped up to like 1,000
No,
because I was
no,
shooting. I
didn't
was
do
shooting
the cover.
something. I was shooting at night the night before, so I had the film speed way up, and I didn't bring it back down because that picture's blown out. You know,
Yeah.
it's real bright.
No, that wasn't me,
remember
man.
Where's this kid at nowadays?
He's still racing, man. Jamie Hancock. He's a mover and shaker in the small tire ranks. I got a couple of heaters in here. For
What
you
about
guys,
J.R.
man.
Todd? That was always a great one.
This I
Oh,
actually
man,
just.
that was awesome.
Here, let me delete, remove from studio. Here we go. Image file. Yeah, you're gonna like this one. J.R. Todd.
Yeah,
New beginning.
I kind of I think Dr. Dre or somebody was on a cover of Rolling
Yep.
Stone or something, and JR pulled it off. I don't know if he was. I remember did we go to lunch with Jimmy Walsh that weekend or that day
Yeah.
that week?
We sure
Yeah.
did.
And it
For
was
the
cold.
layout, for the layout on this one, I didn't do that cover. I did the layout. I did that cover, I think. And
Yeah, you
was-
definitely did that cover.
And I remember he had like the little diamond stud and the Oakley on the glasses, and we did the J.R. Todd name really big and like with like
Yeah.
diamond on it, some kind of effect that we did on there. I remember that being like revolutionary. And then we had to
I
print it
remember
on newsprint, and it's like it just loses all of it.
I had a lot of side lights on wire systems in the shop at Morgan Lucas's, and I got up in the rafters and took some pretty cool, zoom shots with some side light stuff going on. I like that one. That was down at Montgomery with Mike Hill.
Yeah, I really liked that one. And here's this was a classic. One of the only
all
black and white
black and white.
covers we ever did.
Yeah, that was.
Travis
I
Swearingen, at the height of the Junkyard Willis. These guys were making hay in ADRL Pro Extreme, had a real hot rod winning races. This was right prior to him securing a sponsorship with the National Guard, if you remember. Pretty crazy to think about how many of these things we've done. We're
All
going to
I remember is-
celebrate.
I remember taking the shots and then going somewhere really good to eat after each of the photo shoots.
Yeah, that's what you remember. How about
They-
the Gilbert Jacobs cover? You got to drop that one in there because we had him dressed up in a suit,
Yeah.
had the
Cigar
whole
and a
look.
glass of whiskey.
Yep.
Yeah, coming in hot, big dog.
And he played it. He played the role really well. Is he still around?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
He's still in the Grudge No Time game. Yeah, this was a good
Right
one.
on. Oh yeah,
That was
Yeah,
killer,
that's
man.
awesome. That's awesome.
It's kind of hard to believe if you really think about it. Like, especially some of these guys were like in such a different place in their careers
Yep.
than they
And
are
they're still
now.
around. I mean, most of them we talk about are still around. But it makes such a difference, like when we've got those, when
There
we've
you
got not
go.
only the cover shots, but just the
Then
supporting
how many-
shots in the layout. It makes such a
Yeah.
difference. And I think that was a cheat code that we had early on, was all of these, not only the cover shots, but just a handful of shots. And we still do that to this day. When we send a photographer out to shoot a cover subject or a big feature, it's, focus on the cover, but we need a ton of supporting shots as well. That always just made the day.
This is this shot in the tower
Texas somewhere.
in San
in
Antonio,
Texas?
Texas, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, San Antonio, Texas. We shot this with Aaron Polburn and Scooter Pico. Golly, it's hard to imagine a time when we were putting the president and vice president of the NHRA on the cover of the magazine. This was always a classic. I thought this was a great one. Cody Barklage, the younger
Yep.
brother of Zach Barklage. This was shot in Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri.
I was working at Timmy's. Drove down there one day. I think they live down around the Ozarks.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that one too. That's a nice shot of Dave.
That was a nice shot of Dave, man.
And he was just a kid. I bet he was 22, 23 years old then.
It's hard to believe, isn't it? Some of these guys. Here's probably one of the ones I actually still have this hanging on my office wall.
Yeah.
The legend Alan Johnson. We shot this at PRI in Orlando in their trade show booth. And
Yeah.
what a moment that was. I remember feeling like we've got to get somebody like a really big name, somebody that no one else could get. Who can we get that no one else could get? And I told Jason, I go, dude, do you think we could get Alan Johnson? And he's like, yeah, let me call him. I'm like, all right, call him. And Jason called AJ, and the next thing you know, we're over having cocktails and shooting pictures with what I would say is inarguably the greatest tuning mind in the history of drag racing.
Yeah, his mom actually told me one time that was her favorite picture of AJ, and it hangs up in their kitchen at her house.
Alexis Ajoria and her top alcohol funny car days.
You know, this story here, it's one of those things like when I do decide to write my novel. And by the way, my book, I didn't plan on writing a chapter about what happened on Monday night anywhere in my book. But after we got done shooting, John Paul DeJoria asked me, hey, you want to do a shot of Patron? I was like, yeah. You're never going to be asked that.
I do.
How many people have had the founder of a company like that, you know, make such a generous offer? And Alexis, she's still the same Alexis. We chat every once in a while. She's still the same humble, low-key Alexis DeJoria.
At that time in November 2007, with her background and everything, did you think that all these years later, 18 years later, we'd be talking about her still racing in Nitro Funny Car? I mean, that's a pretty, impressive thing. Not only to capture her that early, but then for the longevity of her career at this point.
It's like I talked about Connie. Alexis could probably do whatever she wanted to do in life.
Exactly. That's what I
mean. For
mean.
her to still be out there and support NHRA and give 10, 15, 20 people jobs shows a lot of, about her integrity and what kind of person she is.
Be there, no doubt, man. Here's one of your favorites there.
Yeah, that is a good one, man.
That's a classic cover, dude.
Yeah, it's just it's clean, Danny was working out. He told me how to get to his house. He was literally had, in his gym clothes. He went and threw on that white shirt and a jacket, sat down in front of, that's the wall. That's not like a drop or anything behind him. That's the color of the wall in the house. We took the photos, and there's actually a lot of natural light in that picture, like on his forehead. And I think I just had one big light flash. It was just I took 5 minutes worth of pictures, and that was it. I'm done.
Yeah, it was a quick deal. I remember that. Then we sent you to California, and you ended up knocking this shot out with Mike Maggio. I love this one. You got a ton of stuff that weekend.
Yeah, he was a good guy too. I wish is he still racing?
Yeah,
I think
a
he
little
bought
bit.
I think he bought one of Shake's old Camaros. I think he bought one of Shake's the Barwa Camaro. I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. Going back to that Danny Rowe shot, go back to the Danny Rowe cover.
Oh, God.
Just looking at that again. I remember doing the drop shadows on the text on that, and I felt like I needed to make it look like it was coming off the wall. You know, like normally you just do drop shadow and it's very soft and you just kind of just want to separate the text from whatever's behind it. But I wanted to do that in a way so that it looked like it was just floating just in front of him, but casting a shadow on the wall. And I remember this being one of my favorite covers also. When you mentioned that earlier, I wasn't thinking about it, but looking at it again, it really is.
That cover and composition could be any of your
Vanity
fashion
Fair.
magazines.
Yeah,
any of
I mean,
them.
it literally could. Shot this in Norwalk, Ohio.
I remember
My
that.
dear buddy, which crazy now, all these years later, Mick's essentially my neighbor. He lives 30 minutes down the road from me.
I remember doing this cover. My mom had her stroke and was, in the hospital in bad shape and passed away a few days later. And I actually did this sitting in the hospital beside her. That's how we used to do it. We talk about a lot of the sacrifices that everybody's made over the years. You two guys amongst those, just thinking at that time, but like it kept my mind going, kept me focused on something, kind of helped at that time. And people were like, "You're crazy, dude. Why are you working on this magazine sitting over here? You need to be focused on this other stuff." But it was therapeutic at the time, but I'll never forget that image sitting that off to print from the hospital.
I remember it well, man.
That was the first weekend I met Jeff Bohr, and he's kind of a big deal now.
Oh, there would be no doubt. This was my favorite, probably one of my all-time favorite covers.
This has got an
Did-
interesting story. It's actually flipped.
I was just gonna say that. You
And,
had to,
and I can't remember exactly why we ended up doing that, Wes. If you can jog my memory, but
It
for
has,
some
I think
reason,
it was the way the
Speedtech
text.
logo. I kind of screwed up. I should have shot him from the other side of the car, because the Speedtech logo would be on the left. If you're looking at the picture, the Speedtech logo would be on the left side, and it would have been under Shannon Jenkins. But the way the picture's framed with the carburetors and Shannon, you had to put all your text on the left side of the cover.
well, I think no, I'm saying this image is backwards, and then I photoshopped the Speedtech on his shirt and on the nitrous solenoids. I
Yeah.
unreversed those so that it wasn't reversed. But this is actually like a mirror image of Shannon. Like if you look at him, for him, it's probably freaky to look at. And for whatever reason, I almost think it was because we didn't want too much of the drag up there covered. And like if he was flipped originally, it was going to cover up too much of it. I can't remember exactly why, but I remember working for days to flip this image, make it look right, cut it out, and then flip the Speedtech on his shirt and the nitrous solenoids again so that they read correctly.
Are there any 3-time covers?
Oh yeah, Eric Enders has been on the cover many times. Or ones you shot, or just in general?
No, just in general for the magazine.
I think Eric has been on the cover 4 times, maybe even more. I think John's been on the cover 3 times, John Force. I think what are some other ones? We went through this exercise not too long ago, Wes.
Yeah, we were actually celebrating our 100th issue, Elon Warner, longtime friend of the program, he banged out a breakdown of all the variations of different people that had been on the cover, how many times they've been on the cover. There's a slew of them here from these are some, it's hard to even remember, like people probably, Darren Hoyle was as hot of a commodity as it gets in small tire racing back in 2007. He was dominating force in Orska Limited 10.5 Limited Street with his 69 Camaro, which still to this day is probably one of my all-time favorite race cars. We busted that out in Commerce, Georgia.
What about, speaking of multi-time covers, Stevie Jackson is one that's been on.
Oh, I've got
multiple
Stevie
times.
coming up.
And that's a Jason Sharp shot. That's one of the best
This
ones.
is a Jason Sharp shot from, we shot this in Huntsville, Alabama.
I saw Doug at PRI. He came up to me and said, and I didn't hardly recognize him. He's wearing like a hat. He's got like a flannel on. He's like comes up like undercover. He's like, hey man,
Just
good
like
job
races.
with those races y'all are doing down there. But you got to get the weight off them nitrous cars.
Here's Stevie Fast Jackson's first appearance on the cover of DI.
This is probably one of the best ones.
April of 2012. This was actually shot in Columbus, Georgia at Stevie's shop at the time. At this point in time, he was still working as a full-time tool salesman. And Jason went out and shot some killer photos of Stevie, who was killing it at the time, still is all these years later. It's hard to believe that was 13 years ago that he was on the cover.
And the supporting shots for this one are as good or better than this cover. If this was a story, I remember
doing something with the wiring on the firewall inside the car, a real crazy shot. You know who my photo assistant was on that photo shoot?
Who? Phil Schuler?
Melanie Troxel.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought it was Melanie Troxel.
Yeah. You know that Darren Hoyle cover. You know who his son is, right?
Yeah, Carson Hoyle.
Yeah, Carson. You should get Carson with that 632 car on cover sometime.
Yeah, I'm a big believer. I'm a big believer in those guys.
Where did you shoot this shot of Ricky?
Baytown, not Baytown, but
no, it was Baytown.
It was the 8th mile track, the little 8th mile track outside of Houston,
not
Texas.
It's not Baytown though. It's
I think it's in Houston.
No, Houston Motorsports Park.
Yeah, Houston Motorsports Park, the little 8th mile track
at the ADRL race.
Yep,
we were there. We won that race.
You won that race. Yeah.
Oh wow.
That's a badass impact jacket. Just that red jacket with the yellow and white impact with the black pants, man. That's actually a good look.
Yeah, that was actually a badass photo.
There was a triathlete that they had written a story on in maybe Sports Illustrated, and he did that same kind of pose with the whatever background he had. When I was trying to explain this to Ricky's kind of difficult to begin with, but he nailed it. I thought he did really well. He always
He really
called me
did.
John. He'd always call me Johnny on the spot.
This is a classic. We Mike and I were actually talking about this. 2010, Jason Lyon and Greg Anderson on the cover of the magazine.
That's got to be
Killer
one of the
shot.
best looking ones. Also, just the color of the car in the background.
It's well lit too.
Typography is good. That's actually, I kind of hate to admit this. I'm glad we didn't tell Greg this last when he's on the show last week. This is the last time that Greg was on the cover, and I think we're going to try to remedy that situation here quickly.
I remember. I blame those photos on Uncle Les. He had his little hydration method was working pretty good that night.
Hydration or dehydration?
Hydrated at the time.
Dehydrated later.
Dehydrated later. Did you shoot? I'm looking here, man. Golly, there's been so many of these that you've shot.
I think it was 60. It was 60 plus. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm blowing through them right now. It's there's a couple of these that I thought were. Where is? This is going to come through small because I only have it low res. But these are a couple that I think are worth mentioning here. We shot this in Chicago. We shot this at Joliet.
They're forever lost on Dave Halden's computer somewhere.
Yeah, Vinny Badano. He was the king of NMCA Pro Street at the time. Longtime friend of ours here at Drag Illustrated, and an all-round awesome human being.
Oh yeah, definitely a guy you want in your corner.
Yeah, 100%. Especially if shit goes south. That's the kind of guy you want around.
Him, Frankie, and little Vinny's not so little anymore. He's a grown man.
There's a classic David Wolf on the cover. This would have been, I believe, the third issue of the magazine, the third one we ever printed.
Yeah, I went down and hung out with the guy that had Hot Rod Gossip, Joe Golden.
Yep.
And him and Lamar Swindle, Justin Curry, that whole crowd kind of helped put me in touch with these guys that weekend. Oh yeah.
Old Billy Glidden shot at his shop in
the Polo
in Indiana.
I think that's another one you flipped around, Mike.
It might have been just to take up some of that space over there on the right side instead of having it cover the Drag Illustrated.
Yep.
I think I did flip that one.
It's kind of fun doing this. I'm sorry. I'm going to do one more and I'll let you guys go.
It's okay.
Where is this one at, John Montecalvo.
Yeah, that was always a good one.
That was a great one.
I take that picture?
Yeah.
No, that's a Mark Revlis photo.
In 2011, it would have been?
Yeah, it's when we brought him to the ADRL race.
Okay. Let me delete that one. I thought that was
Mark's first ADRL experience at Rockingham. That was the race where Bert Jackson got killed.
Oh, wow.
It's been a long...
It's amazing. It's amazing how, like, photographers can tell photographers' lighting. Because I can tell all the Mark shots and Randy Anderson shots, and those guys are kind of guys I look up to.
Dude, there's so many of these. It's almost unbelievable. You shot Steve Petty at Proline, did you not?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was kind of on one knee in front of
kneeling down. Yep.
Yeah.
And do the mongoose, the snaky mongoose, to wrap it up, because I think that is the last one. We got to get you back out. Jason's been sending me stuff. He's been kind of knocking the cobwebs out and got him a new mirrorless camera.
Before I went on my last holiday trip, I bought this Sony AC7 II because everybody's talking about mirrorless this and mirrorless that. And I bought a couple nice lenses. Man, I'll tell you what, I'm very impressed with that Sony camera. And it's the 90 millimeter macro lens I bought is really like a portrait lens. So I got to figure out a way to convince KH to let's do one for old times and do some stuff with him.
All right, here's the most recent Bubba Smooth cover. The late Tom the Mongoose McEwen and Don Perdome on the cover of the 2018 Nostalgia Special issue. We actually did away with the Nostalgia Special issue.
You know
that's at the museum, right? Or is it at
That's at Perdome's place.
Yeah.
Perdome's shop. I was unemployed at the time, and I was living with Scott Bathurst at Classic Graphics. And, Scott actually lived with Mongoose, I think in the early 90s for quite some time.
Yeah.
And I would occasionally go meet Mongoose for dinner at Ponderosa or something like that once every couple of weeks. And I drove down to, starts with an M. I can't remember the cities from. Oh, Fountain City. I drove down to his house, got in his car, and like we started off the day at McDonald's, got a sandwich, went down to Snakes. I had never met Perdome officially. He was so, humble and nice to me and everything. And he took us to lunch. Then we went up to Dan Chuck, I think it was, the people that made Mongoose's 57 Chevrolet funny car body.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a 10-hour day with the Mongoose. We went to Mickey Thompson's son was redoing Mickey Thompson's Streamliner. And the actor from the Snake and the Mongoose movie, he met us halfway up the trip. And I got some pictures of Mickey Thompson's kid, the actor from the movie, Mongoose, and another guy who was a fabricator. Some really cool, once in a lifetime type pictures. I miss Mongoose because he's one of those guys you could call and he's going to tell you straight. You need to get that off your mind and focus on this, or maybe you could do it that way. He'd always give you straightforward, advice.
But Mongoose was in the magazine business for a while.
Yeah, I was going to say we always had this like kind of weird relationship because Tom and I respected each other a lot. I know I obviously respected him and idolized him in a lot of ways. But there was this little bit of contentiousness between us because we were both in the magazine business. And I remember every time I saw him, I said, dude, when are we going to work together? Like, let's just do this together. Like, I want to do this with you. I want you to be a part of this. And unfortunately, we never got it done. But I will tell you, knock on wood, and thank God, a lot of those guys that I've crossed paths with over the years, I think about Brett Underwood. Brett Underwood was always kind of, he was the competition. He was the driving force behind drag racing action. And we always kind of butted heads and we never really spoke much. And anytime we did, it was kind of awkward. And then the doors started to slip. I remember multiple times I had told him, I'd pat him on the shoulder and I said, don't worry. One of these days we're going to be in this together. Just wait and see. One of these days we're going to be in this together. And now he's been a part of our family for 5 years and is integrally involved with everything we do. It's pretty amazing.
I forget, I'm not old, I'm 55, but I do forget a lot of stuff, but I remember a lot of stuff too. And I remember a lot of the guys that kind of snubbed their noses at us when we were out there trying to make a living. And I see a lot of those people treating you a different way now. And, congratulations for you and Mike both for sticking with it and never letting your guard down or, letting your integrity fall to other means. But I think the magazine's impressive. You need to figure out how to get me 50 copies every month shipped to Doha. Because everybody
will get UPS number, not USPS, and we'll make it happen.
Yeah, we'll get JR to take care of that for you.
Tell JR Gray to handle it.
Yeah, I'll tell JR to take care of it.
In all fairness to JR, it wasn't his fault. You can ask him who took care of the shipping. I'll let him tell you that story.
Nah, the story's better if we just blame it on JR. But man, you're saying, we talk about that a lot, and at this point, yeah, we're not old, but we're starting to get that way, I guess you could say. But we've been here, stood the test of time, 20 years in now, and I think that so much of this is just consistency and being persistent and just not taking no for an answer, fight through the hard times, like you're saying. And I mean, we did a lot of cool revolutionary stuff and continue to, but it's more just standing the test of time and just not giving up. And I think that is kind of, if we had to say what the secret sauce is to what we're doing, it's literally just being so damn hard-headed.
I mean, it's literally, I have people ask me like, hey man, like if you had to pick like a key to success or whatever, I was like, oh, that's pretty easy. Don't quit. Like, I mean, that's literally because over the course of the last 20 years, I've had to buy out my partners on a couple of different occasions. I've been through to hell and back. Mike has been through with most of it with me. I remember when COVID happened in 2020, I was like, man, I thought all this bullshit was behind us. Like I thought all these tough days were behind us. But it was like a real, just reminder that that's the kind of mentality that it takes. You got to be ready to go to war every single day. And for like all the covers that I just threw up there, I think I threw almost 50 different ones at us. There are an infinite number of people that didn't take our call, wouldn't call me back, wouldn't take us seriously, wouldn't take the time. I mean, there's one racer, I won't name his name, but I vividly remember calling and telling him that I wanted to arrange a photo shoot with him because he was making waves. And he said, he literally told me that he didn't have time to fuck with me. He was sighting in his deer rifle. And I thought, okay, no big deal, but it's like a lot of those conversations happened. I mean, I remember calling companies trying to sell them advertisements and call me whenever you're actually doing something. I mean, some guys that we've mentioned on this call, I had a really, really, really respected photographer, a guy that I looked up to greatly. I'll never forget it. It was like the ultimate stomach punch. I was in Topeka, Kansas, and I was on the wall, and it was one of the first, couple of dozen races that I'd been to as Drag Illustrated, and no sort of photographer. I was a horrible photographer, actually, and I was on the wall just trying to make friends or whatever, talking to people, and I introduced myself to this old boy, and I said, "Hey, man, Wes Buck, Drag Illustrated." "Oh, what's Drag Illustrated?" And I said, "Well, it's a magazine I started like about 2 years ago, and we're just, kind of getting this thing off the ground or whatever, working and, just trying to make it happen, And he goes, "Well, good luck. Most small businesses don't last 5 years, right?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm aware." And he's like, "Well, I'll be looking forward to seeing if you're still out here in 5 years." And then you fast forward 15 years later and he worked for us. You know what I mean? And it's just like, you know what I mean? It was, but hey, I get it. I totally understand. But
I don't remember the context of your comment, but it was 15 years ago, probably. There's something about having a physical copy of a magazine in your hand and actually reading it. And to that day, like, you can count on me reading either the Peninsula newspaper or the Gulf Times almost every day of the week. And, I'll take a picture of an article and send it to one of my friends here in Doha about current events. And they're like, "Where the hell did you see that?" I'm like, "Peninsula newspaper." You read the paper? I was like, "Yeah."
I got
Something about holding a newspaper or a magazine.
Even in today's times, become more digital, our footprint continues to grow in print, and I think a lot of niche magazines could say that same thing. And I mean, niche newspapers, I think it's about drilling down on your audience. That's really what we've learned also, is we've got an audience that's a very obviously specific group of people, and we're going to drill down and deliver stuff just for that group of people rather than trying to just make something for everybody. I think that's what works.
In this day and age, man, I think there's so much information that's available to us. I was telling my wife this just the other night in regards to all this, strife in the world and whatnot. I said, we're not, as humans, really designed to process the amount of information that's put in front of us. Like, it's too much. And in this social media age that we live in, like, I don't mean to use like buzzwords or whatever, but like the fake news thing is real. Like, a large majority of the shit you see on social, you have to go vet yourself. You have to go check it yourself. You have to go cite several sources to see if it's true. And I think that that's really a lot of what we do at Drag Illustrated is we take this whole world of information that's available and we distill it down into a consumable amount of information. And I'm really proud of it. I feel like we're doing a service to the sport of drag racing, and that's what I wake up wanting to do every single day, is leave the sport a little bit better than I found it,
Check out the app. It's called Ground News, and it's kind of an unbiased. They'll take the same story by 100 different news outlets and then break it down into left, right, and then in the middle, neutral. And it's pretty accurate about their stories, because just things happen in the Middle East. Friends call me from the States, and the story I hear from them is nothing further from the truth. It's just how the media tries to control people in the States.
There's no doubt, man. Well, Jason, dude, this has been a ton of fun. Mike, thank you so much. I hope everybody's enjoyed this as much as I haven't
been on the telephone for 2 hours since my senior prom girlfriend when I was 18, probably. in the middle of the night.
Get used to it, man. We do this every week.
I'm a 5-minute phone call kind of person.
Well, hey man, we've surely enjoyed it, and I hope we do it again. I really do. There's a whole lot. We've barely scratched the surface of the amount of stories.
Or
we've got
maybe
to tell about this
jump
whole
out to San Diego and hit a Red Bull air race just for old
I've
times.
got those photos keyed up too, but I didn't put them in here.
Sign me up for that.
Yeah,
Send your
man.
boy. You need to send your boy JT over here to play some of our World Championship golf courses.
You tell us when, buddy.
Don't put that idea
We'll
in his
come
head.
over.
He'll do it.
My son was beating me up. Dad, do you still know the Sheik? I'm like, yeah. I talked to him Monday, and he's like, I want to go to Qatar. I'm like, well, let's wait a couple of weeks.
That's not
let's
good.
give it a minute. Yeah, let's wait a couple of weeks, but maybe we can go this winter. So, well, Jason, thank you seriously, man.
Yeah, next time you talk to Langdon or J.R. Todd or Del Worsham, those guys could kind of tell you. Belushi, he can tell you how since the last time you were here, how things have. It's a different lifestyle. We're way ahead of a lot of things. It's pretty incredible. I can go anywhere. People was like, "Why are you coming back? When are you coming back to the States?" I'm like, "Why?" And that was the first thing Sean told me when he came back from his Bradenton test. When he came back here, he's like, "We got to figure out a way for me to stay another month and race because we were racing 6 more weeks." But he had to go race his, dragster. Y'all got to come over for sure, and I'll get Shake.
We were close a few years ago. We were almost there. We ended up in a deal in Saudi Arabia.
I got the right guy in my corner to get you here.
Yeah, well, we'll make it happen sooner rather than later, man. And what we want is you to come to Bradenton and be a part of the Winter Series again. We need you down there shooting pictures, hanging out, talking shit.
I think we need to talk the boss man into that and get us on a plane and enjoy it. Be a good time.
We have more fun than anybody else on the planet. I can promise you that. So,
right
well, Jason, everybody, thank you
right.
guys, all of our sponsors. We appreciate it. Thanks for everybody to hanging out. Blake in the green room, we appreciate you, buddy. And we'll see you next Wednesday right here as we tiptoe up to the 4th of July. I say this every year. The 4th of July happens, and the next thing I know, it's Christmas. It's crazy how much time has gone by in 2025. But we look forward to seeing you right here on the Drag Illustrated YouTube channel next Wednesday afternoon, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. Jason, Mike, appreciate y'all. We'll see you soon.
Good night, guys. Ciao. See you. Bye.